the maximum level expert. She thrives in interstellar riches. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 1, Picking Up Trash. The cold wind was raging, and the spider webs between the ruins were swaying in the wind. The broken stones and rubble were scattered everywhere, and the damp and moldy smell and pungent smell in the air were intertwined. In this dark and damp corner, snakes and rats occasionally roamed around, but Wen Jiu was numb to it. Looking back half a month ago, she was still a modern cultivator. Although she lived in the deep mountains and old forests to practice with her master, at least she had enough food, clothing and shelter. But she never expected that, after waking up from a sleep, she became a 12-year-old orphan who lived in the interstellar age and made a living by picking up garbage. And the cultivation methods she had learned could not be used here. God knows how she felt when she woke up and found herself in a dirty and messy environment. The cultivator Wen Jiu became the orphan Wen Jiu, and at the same time, inherited the memories of the original owner. The original owner's childhood memories were very vague, with only some fragments of the past 2 years. The other party grew up in this environment like a rat. Every day, he went to the garbage dump to find some food, and would try to snatch some scrap copper and iron from adults to sell for money. In short, he tried every means to survive. It's a pity that the original owner couldn't resist the sudden acute illness despite such efforts. Alas, hemp ropes break at the thinnest part, and misfortune finds the unfortunate. Wen Jiu has always been very receptive. After all, she had witnessed her senior sister flying into the sky with her left foot on her right foot. So she quickly accepted the reality of crossing and chose to inherit the original owner's career and continue to pick up garbage. There is no way. She is too young now. There is no way to do any job, and she has to find a way to survive. Therefore, she has spent the past half month like this, but as time goes by, she has gained experience in picking up garbage. In a small garbage dump like that, although the probability of picking up nutrient solution and discarded food is the highest, the wandering adults around are staring at it covetously and may be robbed at any time. Even though there were many adults squatting to pick up scraps and sell them for money at this large garbage dump, the area was too large, and a child like her could pick up some by being flexible. However, it was impossible to snatch good things from adults. Even if she picked them up, they would be snatched away, and she would even be beaten. When Wen Jiu couldn't even afford medicine, she would most likely die from a beating. So Wen Jiu didn't come to this large garbage dump to risk her life to snatch valuable things. She mainly came to pick up some food to eat. After all, people have to fill their stomachs to survive. Until a strong light shot down from the dark night sky, the floating car full of garbage stopped in midair and made a roar. Wen Jiu immediately pulled the big bag beside him, found a good position, and waited for an opportunity. Boom, 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 boom. The garbage on the floating car had been dumped, and as the light disappeared and the car drove away, Wen Jiu rushed into the garbage dump like an arrow from a string. There were many people around like her, rushing towards the garbage dump frantically. Wen Jiu endured the nauseating pungent smell and tried hard to search in the garbage dump while trying to avoid being discovered by the adults who were like jackals and tigers. In such an environment, robbery is common. She was in a place she had been to many times before. Because it was a distance away from the center of the garbage mountain, few people would come here to search first. Generally, people would come here after searching other places. Wen Jiu carefully searched the garbage dump with her hands full of dirt, but she was actually so hungry that her legs were shaking and her head was dizzy. She just held on with one breath. I don't know if her luck today is really good. She actually found a few boxes of unopened meat slices. Wen Jiu quickly checked the expiration date on it, which happened to be expired the day after tomorrow. If she picked it up today, she could still eat it for 2 days. So she immediately stuffed the boxes of meat slices into her pocket and then continued to search the garbage. Before she could search for long, she suddenly heard a burst of hurried footsteps from the left. Wen Jiu pulled up her bag vigilantly and found a nearby oil can to hide in. Not long after she hid in, she heard two men cursing outside. "Didn't you say there was a kid here every day? Where is he? I saw him a few days ago. I don't know why he's not here today. What the hell are you talking about? Did I come here with you to steal some air? You can't even see a person, you loser. What the hell are you in a hurry for? Look for her again. She may have moved to another place." Hearing the sound, Wen Jiu shrank into the oil can and didn't move. At the same time, she slowed down her breathing and tried to hide her movements. The world is really dangerous. She is so poor that she can't even take out half a star coin from her pocket and still wants to rob. TSK, I'm afraid she's frozen to death somewhere. If you want to find her yourself. I'm going to find someone else. Go away, I'm going to find her myself. After that, the footsteps of the other person gradually went away. But the person who stayed behind was still circling around, making rough rummaging sounds from time to time. Wen Jiu pricked up her ears and waited patiently. She was too young to fight an adult head on, so she naturally hoped to avoid it if she could. However, things did not develop in the direction she expected. The man had been looking for her for a long time and had not given up. The unbearable shouting and cursing had not stopped. Wen Jiu also cursed in her heart. This man really delayed her time to pick up garbage. Moreover, she was huddled in the oil tank barrel, and the biting cold almost froze her. After a while, the shouting and searching finally disappeared. Wen Jiu waited for a while, and after confirming that the person outside had indeed left, she carefully opened the lid of the barrel. But at the moment she opened the lid of the barrel, a pair of rough big hands suddenly reached in, grabbed her hair like dry grass, and lifted her up like pulling a carrot. Damn it, the little bastard is hiding here. The pain of her hair pulling on her scalp made Wen Jiu almost crazy. She kept struggling in the air, but the adult man who lifted her up was as easy as lifting a rabbit, and she couldn't get away at all. The burly man with several scars on his face picked her up and looked at her for a moment, then smiled. She's a woman. It seems she can be sold for a lot of money. However, Wen Jiu had not given up struggling yet and tried to grab upwards with her hands with long sharp nails, which pricked Chen Gang's hands and hurt them. "Fuck you." Chen Gang threw Wen Jiu to the ground fiercely and then saw that his hands were full of red marks. He was so angry that he wanted to punch Wen Jiu on the ground. But Wen Jiu did not give him this opportunity. Although she was thrown to the ground and it hurt a lot, it was more important to escape. Before the fist fell, Wen Jiu gritted her teeth and turned over, then immediately got up and ran away. But before she ran far away, a rope flew from behind and tied her left calf, tripping her to the ground. Wen Jiu was dragged quickly on the ground like a captured prey. Chapter 2. Finally there is meat to eat. TSK, let's see where you can run to. Chen Gang's rough and arrogant voice was getting closer and closer to Wen Jiu. When he was dragged back to the original place in such a garbage-filled place, Wen Jiu's body was already covered with small cuts from debris. Finally, he caught the goods he was looking for. Chen Gang looked at Wen Jiu who fainted in front of him with satisfaction, thinking that he could sell this little girl and get a lot of star coins to spend. But he didn't notice the little girl's left hand buried behind her back. Chen Gang squatted down while humming a tuneless song, slowly approaching Wen Jiu, wanting to tie her up more firmly with the rope before taking her away. But in an instant, Wen Jiu, who was lying on the ground, suddenly opened his bright and clear eyes, like a ferocious beast that had been dormant for a long time. A second later, Chen Gang covered his neck that was constantly bleeding and fell to the ground twitching, his eyes wide open with surprise and fear. The little girl who stood up again was holding a sharp piece of iron in her left hand, and scarlet blood was dripping on the black iron. Chen Gang bled like a fountain, and he twitched for less than a minute. His cloudy pupils became dilated, and his hands, which he had tried to cover tightly, fell to the side. It was not advisable to stay here for long. Wen Jiu quickly searched the man's body calmly, and after finding some things that looked like they could be sold, she quickly walked back to the oil tank and picked up the big bag before leaving. Facing the cold wind, Wen Jiu walked barefoot on the dirty mud until she saw the abandoned floating bus where she was hiding. She stopped to take a breath and then carefully searched the surroundings again and then got into the bus. After Wen Jiu dragged her tired body in, she covered the door with a wooden board standing beside her. The interior of the car was already full of rust. After all the seats were removed, only an empty space was left. The wooden boards and iron sheets picked up by Wen Jiu were nailed to the uncovered windows. Because it had been abandoned for too long, a lot of wet moss had grown in the corners. However, in such an environment, it was not easy to have a place to rest. Wen Jiu threw her pocket aside. She was really tired. She fell on the bed made of tattered cloth with a thud. Although it was not soft, it was more comfortable than lying on the hard floor. After resting for a while, Wen Jiu sat up and looked at herself. Her body was covered with mud and stains. Her worn clothes were stained with eye-catching blood, and there were blood stains on her limbs. Fortunately, the wounds were not deep, so there would be no danger to her life. I just don't know if there will be scars in the future. Wen Jiu took out a handful of herbs from the bag beside her, crushed them, and gently applied them to the wound. When will this day end? After treating the wound, Wen Jiu lay on the ground and talked to herself, shaking her feet. The cold touch made her look down, and then she remembered that her shoes had been knocked off during the dragging. She had been digging through the garbage for more than 10 days before she found a pair of shoes that had no holes and fit her feet. She hadn't been comfortable for a few days, and now she has become a barefoot fairy again. The already poor life is even worse. Thinking that she has no shoes to wear again, Wen Jiu sighed deeply. Life is not easy, and Jiu sighed for a long time. Forget it, at worst she can pick up another pair. Wen Jiu recovered her mood after a moment of relaxation. She stood up and walked to the big bag and began to carefully clean up her harvest today. Although the garbage collection action today was forcibly interrupted, her harvest was still good. First, there were 5 boxes of meat slices, and Wen Jiu checked them again. The packaging was intact, and the label showed that it was the meat of the Jiu beast, and the shelf life was exactly the day after tomorrow. She held the boxes of meat slices up to her nose one by one and sniffed them. After confirming that there was no foul smell of corruption, she put the 5 boxes of Jiu beast meat slices into the wooden box she used to store food. Then Wen Jiu sorted some small parts and packed them in different categories, and finally began to check the items of the trafficker who tried to sell her. In the Interstellar era, all the money is stored in the Star Network. To access the Star Network, you must first have and bind a wisdom ring. But Wen Jiu couldn't even afford a wisdom ring, let alone the Star Network. But she knew that many wisdom rings have positioning functions, so in order to prevent being found, she did not take the man's wisdom ring. The man didn't have much on him, except for the rope that flew to tie her up, which looked more valuable. The other sundries could be sold for about 100 star coins. These star coins may not seem much, but for Wen Jiu now, it is already a lot of money. You have to know that a bottle of the lowest level nutrient solution costs 5 star coins, and a bottle of nutrient solution can fill the stomach for a meal. Wen Jiu calculated in her mind that if she bought 20 bottles of nutrient solution, she could hold out for more than 10 days. It seemed that her next days would be relatively easy. Wen Jiu put the pile of items back into her pocket, intending to go to the scrap shop to sell them when it was daylight. It was only 4:30 in the morning, and she was not very hungry at the moment after drinking a few drops of nutrient solution. So Wen Jiu shrank back into the pile of cloth, closed her eyes, and began to brew sleep. As time slowly passed, the only sound in the car was her slight rise and fall of breathing. Not long after, the dazzling sunlight shone in through the gap. Wen Jiu seemed to feel the warmth and slowly opened her eyes and rubbed them. Alas, when will this day end? She really wanted to wake up from a sleep and return to her former good life. But Wen Jiu only thought about it for a while, and then woke up from her fantasy. It was better to give up the fantasy and face the reality. Wen Jiu dug out a pair of torn cloth shoes from the wooden box in the corner. Although her thumb stuck out straight from a huge hole, the shoes still fit her feet. Then she dug out a clean old dress to change into. After all, if she walked out covered in blood, the mother-in-law who collected waste would probably close the shop on the spot. After cleaning herself up, Wen Jiu took out a box of Jiu beast meat slices from the wooden box. She had finished drinking the nutrient solution, so she could only eat some meat slices. The environment was simple and could not do any complicated processing. This was the first time Wen Jiu had picked up ingredients that were well packaged and not expired since she came here. Although fruits and vegetables in the Interstellar era were much more expensive than meat, the price of meat was not much cheaper. Poor people like her could only survive on nutrient solution. Wen Jiu first dug out a few seasonings she had collected before, then washed the meat slices with clean water and put them in a bowl. This sweet and sour pork was a bit like the pork belly of ancient Earth, with red and white, fat, and lean, but it was a pity that there was no wine to remove the fishy smell. Fortunately, Wen Jiu had found a plant similar to ginger before. She cut a few slices with a sharp iron sheet and threw them into a bowl, then added some salt and pepper and mixed them well. Then she found some sharp iron rods to knock and hit, and then threw a few flammable objects outside the car to make a fire. After lighting the brilliant flame, Wen Jiu put the meat slices on the iron rod and started to roast them. The sweet and sour pork slices were evenly fat and lean. The fat made a sizzling sound when roasted on the fire. After the fat seeped out of the meat, it dripped into the fire and burst into small sparks. Not long after, as the aroma of the meat became stronger and stronger, the skewers in Wen Jiu's hand were finally roasted. Sprinkle cumin on it, and then she took a bite to taste it. The fat and lean meat of the sweet and sour beast had a strong aroma, and the taste of cumin was perfectly integrated into it, not abrupt at all, and it also melted the greasy taste of the fat. I just felt that the sweet and sour meat became more fragrant and not greasy at all when I chewed it in my mouth. Cool. Wen Jiu sighed with satisfaction. After so many days, she finally had a bite of meat. Chapter 3. I can only make a living by selling scraps. After finishing the delicious barbecue, Wen Jiu put away the utensils. After cleaning herself up, she took her bag and went out. The garbage area where she lived was several hours away from the nearest urban area, but Wen Jiu had been there several times before, so she didn't feel tired. She just took it as exercise. It was almost noon when Wen Jiu saw the edge of the city. She walked into a scrapyard on the outskirts of the city with ease and called out sweetly, "Grandma Zhao." However, after entering the scrapyard, she did not see the familiar old woman. Only a tall and thin young man put down the goods and looked at her. "Grandma Zhao is out. Are you here to sell things?" Wang Nan narrowed his eyes and looked at the thin Wen Jiu. Hearing this, Wen Jiu just nodded without saying anything and slowly dragged her bag to the storage table. She didn't wait for Wang Nan to help and threw the bag neatly on the table. TSK, the quality of these things is average. Wang Nan walked to the table and put on gloves. He fiddled with the things in the bag for a few times and smacked his lips and said, "At most 80 star coins." While Wang Nan was checking the items, Wen Jiu also secretly observed him. As the saying goes, appearance is determined by the heart. Even if he pretends to be kind, the truth can be seen from his face. This man has thin lips and a narrow chin, and he is greedy for profit. However, his cheekbones are not high, so he is still a person who can make friends. There is a simple iron plate hanging on the chest of his coarse cloth clothes, engraved with Grandma Zhao's resource recycling station, which looks like a helper hired by Grandma Zhao. 100. Since it was not Grandma Zhao herself, Wen Jiu did not mean to be polite and directly quoted the estimated price in her mind. She has sold scrap here several times in the past half month, and she still has an idea of the recycling price of these things. Wang Nan did not expect that the price quoted by the seemingly docile and ignorant child in front of her was exactly the highest recycling price for these items. But he was a businessman after all, and he didn't want to just go along with her, so he tried to cut the price down as much as he could. So Wang Nan took out a few items from the bag and said in a tone that was good for her, "Little sister, the price I give you is absolutely the most fair. Look, the tail of your red gold screw has a lot of wear and tear, and this printed circuit board has too many scratches. I also gave you an extra 10 star coins because you are young. If you go to other places to sell it, they will give you a maximum of 70. But Wen Jiu didn't buy his tricks and insisted on his offer expressionlessly. 100. Wang Nan's grinning smile instantly stiffened a lot, and he sighed and said, "Well, how about this? 90. Wen Jiu didn't bargain with him anymore. She silently put the items on the table back into her pocket and walked towards the door without looking back, dragging her pocket. This made Wang Nan stunned. He thought that this kid would have to fight with him for a few more rounds, but why did he leave without saying a word? There weren't many people selling scraps recently, and the business he had just got couldn't just run away like this. Seeing that Wen Jiu was about to walk out of the door, Wang Nan gritted his teeth and shouted, 95. Seeing that she still didn't turn back, and even walked faster and faster, Wang Nan was completely helpless and gritted his teeth and shouted the last time, 100. Just 100. After hearing his offer, Wen Jiu turned around. Unlike her indifferent expression just now, she walked towards Wang Nan with curved eyebrows. After Wang Nan saw her smiling face, he was even more depressed because of the failure of bargaining. However, Wen Jiu just walked in front of him and stretched out his little hand, waiting for him to pay. Alas, Wang Nan gritted his teeth, took out 100 star coins from his waist bag and slowly handed them to Wen Jiu. Thank you, brother. Wen Jiu took the star coins that Wang Nan held tightly in his hand and put them in his pocket. In this era, paper money is rarely used. All payments are made through the star network. That is, poor people like them who can't afford the wisdom ring and can't use the star network still use paper money for transactions. Wen Jiu collected the money and emptied her pockets. She was about to leave when Wang Nan suddenly called her. Little sister, do you want to sell that rope? Wang Nan stared at Wen Jiu with shining eyes, her gaze fixed on the rope bundle at her waist. Seeing his expression, Wen Jiu immediately understood. It seems that the price of the rope is probably not low, otherwise this stingy person would not be so active in asking. So Wen Jiu took the rope off and held it in his hand. After thinking for a moment, he smiled sweetly and said, sell it. I picked it up too. Hearing Wen Jiu say that he picked it up, Wang Nan immediately made up his mind and said, this rope of yours should be a replica, not worth much. Is that so, big brother? Wen Jiu pouted and scratched his hair, like an innocent child. How much can it be sold for? Wang Nan suppressed his excitement and walked 2 steps pretending to be indifferent. Just 400 star coins. In order to prevent Wen Jiu from getting suspicious, he added a few more words. Brother is also thinking that the cold season is coming soon, and you look pitiful at your young age. I want you to buy more things to keep warm, so I opened the price. For replicas like this, we don't usually buy them. After saying that, he secretly glanced at Wen Jiu who was thinking with his head down, and waited patiently. He opened the price for 400 star coins. I don't know how long this kid will have to pick up garbage to earn this amount. Unexpectedly, Wen Jiu suddenly raised her head and smiled at him. In that case, I won't bother you. She quickly tied the rope back to her waist and ran out of the door. Only Wang Nan was left standing there in a daze. Wen Jiu ran for a while before stopping and thinking about Wang Nan's words for a while. Seeing that he wanted this rope so eagerly, the price would probably be more than 400. She had to go to a few scrapyards to ask before she could estimate the appropriate price. Thinking of this, Wen Jiu walked towards another scrapyard she knew. But before she took a few steps, she saw an old woman with grey hair tremblingly walking towards her. Grandma Zhao. Wen Jiu recognized Grandma Zhao at a glance and ran to her side with a smile. Granny Zhao looked at Wen Jiu running over, coughed twice and smiled kindly. Oh, my dear girl. I haven't seen you for a long time. I haven't come here because I haven't had any gains recently. Wen Jiu took the bag from Granny Zhao's hand and supported Granny Zhao to walk forward slowly. I came to see you as soon as I had goods. Wen Jiu has always been eloquent. As long as she wants to talk, there is nothing she can't talk about. However, when she supported Granny Zhao, she took her pulse and immediately realized that Granny Zhao must have a cold and cough. So Wen Jiu continued, Granny Zhao, what did you do just now? I didn't see you when I went to the scrapyard just now. Granny Zhao smiled and replied, well, I went out to see a doctor. Recently, I have a little cough. Wen Jiu understood it well. Granny Zhao often gave her a high price when she came to sell scraps and took good care of her. So Wen Jiu thought about it and said, I see, I heard others say that drinking more ginger juice can relieve cough. After hearing this, Grandma Zhao was a little confused, but the feeling of coughing came to her mind again. She could only cough violently for a while before she said weakly, what is ginger? Wen Jiu realized that this world seemed to have no ancient Chinese plants, and even if there were, many scientific names were different from what she knew. So Wen Jiu took out a piece of ginger from his pocket. This is it. Mash it, boil it with water, remove the residue and drink the soup. In fact, it is best for Grandma Zhao to drink more ginger and apricot soup for this symptom. But Wen Jiu didn't know if there were almonds and licorice in this world. Grandma Zhao took the ginger handed over by Wen Jiu and looked at it. My dear girl, are you talking about this? We all call this horseradish. It tastes very spicy. Wen Jiu nodded. This is it, Grandma, you can try it. After that, she stuffed the remaining ginger into Grandma Zhao's pocket. Granny Zhao didn't want to disappoint Wen Jiu's kindness, so after thanking him, she started chatting with him again until they returned to the scrapyard. Chapter 4 Dual Abilities. As soon as the two stepped into the door, they saw Wang Nan bargaining with someone else. Brother, I'm really not kidding you. Wang Nan held up a piece of iron-like thing and said earnestly, the quality of your thing is really not good. I'm afraid no one else will accept it. The burly middle-aged man standing in front of him asked in a trembling voice, brother, I got this back with great difficulty. It should be sold for at least 200, right? 150, no more. Look at it, it's all rusty. We have to remove the rust after we take it back, and the cost has to be 100. Wen Jiu looked at the iron lump as Wang Nan said. It was indeed covered with red marks and a few dents. But the middle-aged man still had no intention of giving in, and begged bitterly, is 180 okay? The winter season is coming soon, and my whole family is waiting to buy warm stones. Wang Nan wanted to refuse, but Grandma Zhao suddenly quickened her pace, and walked closer and said, then 180, Zhao Wang. Wang Nan then saw Grandma Zhao was being supported by Wen Jiu. Since the boss had spoken, he couldn't refute it, so he could only pout and take out the star coins from his waist bag and give them to the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man also saw Grandma Zhao, and after taking the star coins, he hurriedly thanked her. Thank you. Thank you. The middle-aged man was excited, and his eyes were a little red. Thank you so much. Grandma Zhao smiled and waved her hand, and sent the middle-aged man away. My daughter, have you prepared all the supplies for this winter season? Speaking of the winter season, Grandma Zhao suddenly thought that Wen Jiu seemed to be alone. She was just a 12-year-old child, and she didn't know how she would survive. Not yet. Wen Jiu answered truthfully. She really didn't prepare any supplies to get through the cold season. The original owner would find a way to get some warm stones, winter clothes, food, etc. But now she doesn't have many star coins on her body, let alone preparing supplies. It's hard to say whether she will have food to eat next month. Grandma Zhao sighed and turned to walk into the house. Wang Nan was inexplicably helpless. Could it be that Grandma Zhao was kind enough to pay for supplies for this kid? Little sister, where are your parents? While Grandma Zhao entered the house, Wang Nan leaned in front of Wen Jiu and asked in a low voice. Wen Jiu glanced at him and said indifferently, I don't know, they should be dead. She really didn't have any thoughts about family affection. In the past world, she was an orphan who was picked up and raised by her master. The original owner was also an orphan, and her parents were nowhere to be found. Hearing this, Wang Nan was speechless and scratched her head in embarrassment. Fortunately, this awkward atmosphere did not last long, and Grandma Zhao slowly walked out with a bag of things. Seeing her walk out, Wen Jiu hurried forward to support Grandma Zhao. Grandma Zhao patted Wen Jiu's hand with relief, handed her the bag and said, these are some old winter clothes. If you don't mind, you can wear them. Wen Jiu took it and opened it with a smile. It was filled with colorful clothes, very similar to the big cotton padded jackets she had seen in the north. So Wen Jiu smiled and thanked her, and Grandma Zhao took out a wrinkled paper. This is the enrollment leaflet of 3047 College. You can try it. Grandma Zhao coughed twice and continued, "You won't have to worry about food and accommodation when you go to school." Wen Jiu took the paper and unfolded it and read it carefully. It said that 3047 College was recruiting reserve soldiers. As long as they passed the physical fitness test, they could enter for free. Not only were there scholarships, but also food and accommodation were provided. This was simply a pillow sent when they were sleepy. Wen Jiu was worried about money. If he could go to school, at least he wouldn't have to sleep outdoors anymore. Wen Jiu read on and saw the last line. Enrollment will be stopped on October 6th, 209 of Xingyuan. Today seemed to be October 5th, when Jiu suddenly realized. So she picked up the pockets filled with winter clothes, said goodbye to Grandma Zhao in a hurry, and ran out of the recycling station to find the floating bus station. The main reason was that it was already past 3 in the afternoon, and 3047 College was in another urban area. If she walked there, she would have to walk until at least the evening. So when Jiu ran to the nearest bus station, gritted her teeth, took out the star coins, and took the floating bus to 3047 College. Although she slept in the abandoned floating bus every day, this was her first time riding since she came here. It felt similar to modern buses, except that the floating buses here were all 3-story and floated in the air, and the speed was completely incomparable to ordinary buses. After about 20 minutes, when Jiu arrived at the gate of 3047 College. Even though it was the last period of enrollment this year, the entrance of the college was crowded with people queuing up to register. When Jiu found a line with fewer people and stood at the end, waiting patiently. Not long after, it was finally her turn. The teacher at the registration office threw out a form and said, "Fill in the information first, then take the form and go to the tent over there. Go inside to measure your physical fitness, and then turn right to the registration office." When Jiu nodded, picked up a pen, and started to fill it out quickly. After filling it out, she followed the teacher's instructions and went into a blue tent. There were still many people waiting for the test in the tent. When Jiu looked at the test instrument with some curiosity, there was a control panel next to a simple iron chair, but there was no display on the table, only a light screen that was like a projection and kept flashing. When those who were tested lay down on it, 2 tentacles-like things would emerge from the top of the chair and stick to their foreheads. Then a bar graph immediately appeared on the screen. Gold type supernatural power level 1, comprehensive evaluation C+. The teacher in charge of recording quickly wrote the form and handed it to the person who got off the chair. When Jiu was confused. What is supernatural power? The memories she received did not have anything to do with supernatural power. So she found a teacher who looked friendly while she had to wait a little longer. "Hello, teacher. May I ask what superpowers are?" There were many poor students who wanted to avoid the cold season by enrolling in school, so Yu-Ruman didn't show any surprise. She smiled and squatted down to answer Wen Jiu. Superpowers are a kind of energy that each of us is born with, but before we learn how to use it, most people find it difficult to detect their energy. Of course, there are also many people who are born without superpowers. The superpowers currently studied by the Federation can be divided into 8 major systems: gold, wood, water, fire, earth, light, darkness, and ice. After enrollment, the teachers will teach you in detail how to use these energies to assist the measure. Taking a test before enrollment is also for better teaching you in the future. Yu-Ruman explained in great detail, and when Jiu quickly understood. She knew something about mechas and the original owner's memory, but this superpower sounded a bit like the elemental power she awakened when she was practicing Taoism. Next, when Jiu wanted to ask a few more questions, but it was her turn to sit on the chair for the test, she could only say thank you in a low voice, then ran to the chair and sat on it. After she lay down, she watched the tentacle-like thing slowly stick to her forehead. It felt a little cold, and there was also a feeling that it seemed to be absorbing her energy. Yu-Ruman watched the thin girl go for the test, and she walked to the control panel to see what the girl's value would be. However, the picture displayed on the light screen made her eyes widen. It turned out to be a double power. Wood power level 1, fire power level 1, comprehensive evaluation A+. In fact, according to the rare double power, it should be judged as S+ level. But Wen Jiu's other values are low, and this combination of wood and fire is relatively tasteless, so the overall evaluation is A+. It's actually a double power. There can only be one double power in 100,000 people. After hearing Wen Jiu's test judgment, everyone in the tent looked at her in amazement. Wen Jiu, on the other hand, was not very upset. She was a wood and fire dual element cultivator before, and her master said that she was born with a talent for alchemy. But after she blew up 5 alchemy furnaces, her master never mentioned her talent again. So Wen Jiu sat up calmly, walked to the teacher in charge of recording and said, "Teacher, my watch." Chapter 5. Successful registration. Wandering around the city, the teacher finally reacted and quickly handed the form to Wen Jiu. Wen Jiu lifted the curtain of the tent and walked to the registration office, handing her form to the teacher at the registration office. "Congratulations on passing the test of our college." Hearing this, Wen Jiu couldn't help but smile. She was so happy when she thought that she would not have to worry about starvation or sleeping outdoors, and even earn scholarships if she worked hard. But the next second, the teacher in front of her gave her a bolt from the blue. "But unfortunately, according to verification, you are an illegal resident and do not meet the standard of free admission to our college, so you need to pay 8,000 star coins for tuition to enroll." 8,000? Even if she sold her, she couldn't get this amount. Wen Jiu's eyes widened. How could she be an illegal resident? "Teacher, can you make some concessions? Look at my form again. I have dual system abilities." Wen Jiu's eyes were moistened instantly, and she choked with sobs. "And I have been without parents since I was a child, and I don't want to be an illegal resident." Wen Jiu tried her best to show her acting skills, but the teacher didn't buy her account. "I'm sorry, we can't change the rules of the college without permission." Could it be that she really couldn't get free food and accommodation? Wen Jiu was a little frustrated, but she still didn't give up and continued to ask, "Does our college have any quotas for poor students? Or can I write an IOU first and work and study slowly?" The teacher just shook his head apologetically. "I'm sorry, if you can't pay the tuition, I'm afraid." Wait a minute. Before he finished speaking, he was interrupted by Yu Ruman, who came. Yu Ruman walked to the registration office in high heels, stroked her curly hair, raised her red lips, and said with a smile, "Zhao Sen, please handle the admission procedures for her first, and then get her a quota for working on campus." The teacher, called Zhao Sen, was stunned for a moment and said with some stammering, "Director Yu, this is probably not in compliance with the regulations. Regulations are dead, people are alive." Yu Ruman didn't look at him again. She stretched out her hand and pulled Wen Jiu over to take a look. "Little girl, you are a rare good seedling. I helped you get into the school. You must study hard in the future to repay me." Wen Jiu looked at the stunning beauty in front of him, blinked and smiled. "Thank you, beautiful sister." This made Yu Ruman smile charmingly again. "Okay, go back and prepare. Remember to report early when school starts in 3 days. Looking at Wen Jiu's back, Yu Ruman swept away her previous smile and looked at Zhao Sen coldly. How can such a good seedling with dual abilities be let go like this? Next, just follow the procedures, and I will report the rest to the vice principal. After saying that, she left the registration office, leaving Zhao Sen standing there awkwardly. He didn't mean to embarrass Wen Jiu. It was the rule of 3047 college that illegal residents must pay tuition. But he quickly came to his senses and continued to handle the procedures for others. Since he successfully registered, Wen Jiu didn't have to prepare supplies for the next winter season. While there was still more than an hour before dark, Wen Jiu decided to stroll around the city. It was her first time to come to the city. In the Interstellar era, technology has advanced rapidly. Unlike the city she knew in the past, this place was full of colorful neon lights, and the later it got, the brighter it became. Suspended buses kept running through it, and occasionally suspended flying cars flew through the air with a deafening roar. After strolling around, Wen Jiu saw the electronic screen outside the mall in front of her showing that the Redstone supermarket was having a discount promotion. Discount promotion. Wen Jiu touched her chin, which seemed to be a noteworthy news for a poor girl like her. So Wen Jiu followed the crowd into the mall and followed the sign into the Redstone supermarket on the underground first floor. There were quite a lot of items in the supermarket, but Wen Jiu could recognize few of them. This was mainly because most of the animals and plants in the interstellar era had undergone tremendous changes, especially the plants, which were very different in appearance from before. Wen Jiu carefully identified the vegetables and fruits in the fruit and vegetable area, and after searching for a while, she found the bitter almonds and licorice she wanted. The names of the two items have not changed, but the bitter almond has changed from a small one to the size of an apple. Wen Jiu sighed inwardly. She had thought that she would have to weigh a few taels, but now only one was enough. However, Wen Jiu did not have much money now, so after finding the items, she first glanced at the price tag. Today's promotional price of bitter almonds is 8 star coins each. Today's promotional price of licorice is 12 star coins per bag. If it were the previous Wen Jiu, she would definitely turn around and leave, but she is different now. She will be able to go to school in 3 days and have food, clothes and a place to live, so she can still afford more than 20 star coins. So Wen Jiu decisively threw the two items into the machine basket behind her. It must be said that this machine is really convenient. There is no need to push the cart or carry the basket by yourself. You only need to temporarily enter your face and the machine basket will automatically follow behind. Then Wen Jiu went to other areas again. After taking 8 bottles of the lowest level nutrient solution, Wen Jiu checked out and left the supermarket. Today's harvest was not bad. Buy 8 low level nutrient solution and get 1 free. Wen Jiu walked towards the exit with her bag in her hand, her eyebrows curved. When she walked to the exit of the mall, it was grey outside and it was raining heavily. The rain splashed on the ground. Wen Jiu had no storage device, so she could only hold the shopping bag in her arms and rush into the rain. Wen Jiu originally wanted to walk home after shopping, but the heavy rain broke her plan. She could only run to the nearest floating bus station in the rain and use the 10 star coin to take the bus to the nearest stop to the garbage area. The speeding floating bus was speeding in the air, and the patter of rain slid down the window. Wen Jiu looked out the window and watched the neon lights change constantly. We have arrived at B12 Street in Fengwu District. Passengers, please take your personal belongings and be ready to get off. Wen Jiu got off the bus and the heavy rain had stopped. Fengwu District is a slum with residential buildings of varying heights, sparse lights, and a dilapidated and bleak scene everywhere. But even in such a dilapidated residence, there is no place for Wen Jiu to stay. It takes more than half an hour to walk from here to the garbage area. Wen Jiu did not stay here for too long. She brushed her wet hair back and walked towards the dark gravel road with a shopping bag in her arms with an expressionless face. Chapter 6. Finally I can start studying. The road leading to the garbage area has not been properly repaired and is still the oldest muddy road. After being washed by the heavy rain, the muddy road has completely turned into a muddy road. The yellow-red soil has become soft and rotten into mud, and muddy water has accumulated on the bumpy road surface. Just stepping on it will bring muddy water to your trouser legs. Wen Jiu tiptoed and walked carefully on the muddy and slippery ground. When she returned to the abandoned bus, she was already soaked and in a mess. The muddy water solidified on her calves wantonly, dyeing her originally wheat-colored skin into earthy yellow. However, it was not only the mess on her body that was waiting for her. Although the car was full of wooden boards and iron sheets to block the wind, the gaps could never be filled. The rain just flowed into it along the gaps, and a puddle of water had accumulated on the floor. Wen Jiu seemed to be accustomed to it. After cleaning the boxes that were eroded by rainwater with an indifferent expression, he moved them to the open space outside. Then he squatted on the ground and soaked up the water with a rag, walked outside to wring it out, and then walked back to soak up the water and wring it out. This was repeated over and over again until only the moisture that could not be removed was left in the car. She could not sleep on the floor tonight, so Wen Jiu carried the boxes back into the car one by one and put them together. Because the clothes and fabrics that were originally spread on the floor were completely wet, Wen Jiu could only hug herself and curl up on the hard boxes. The humidity and coldness in the car made Wen Jiu unable to fall asleep. She could only stare at the rusty roof in a daze. This kind of life was really unbearable. If only she had money, she could live in a big mansion, eat delicious food by the fire. The more Wen Jiu thought about it, the more absorbed she became. She felt like the little match girl who was about to freeze to death. But she would never just fantasize like this. Wen Jiu secretly set a small goal in her heart, to make 100 million first. When she has money, she will buy a mansion, and want full house eating. She wants unlimited food. She wants a soft mattress. She wants to make a lot of money. She wants to be a rich woman. Wen Jiu's belief became more and more firm, and at the same time, she felt like there was a fire burning hotter and hotter in her body. The fire gradually warmed her body, and she gradually felt sleepy. In the next few days, Wen Jiu lived on the meat slices she had picked up, and the nutrient solution she had bought. She did not go to the garbage dump to look for garbage. Until the third day of school, Wen Jiu packed up her various sundries early and walked to Grandma Zhao's resource recycling station to sell all the items that would not be used in the future. She also handed the bitter almonds and licorice she had bought before to Grandma Zhao. Grandma Zhao, soak this bitter almond in warm water, peel and tip it, and then mash it. Then fry the licorice until it turns yellow and grind it into fine powder. Then peel and wash the horseradish I gave you before. Chop it and mash it with salt. Finally, boil all these together and drink the soup, and it will cure your cough. When Wen Jiu came this time, she saw that Grandma Zhao's cough became more and more intense, and she even coughed up blood. So she carefully instructed Grandma Zhao to take good care of her illness. After all, Grandma Zhao took good care of her before. If it weren't for the bag of clothes given by Grandma Zhao, Wen Jiu would still have to wear ripped cloth shoes now. After explaining it to Grandma Zhao many times, Wen Jiu took the floating bus to 3047 College. When Wen Jiu arrived at 3047 College, it was exactly 8 o'clock in the morning, and the teacher was standing at the gate of the college waiting for everyone to gather and then call the roll. Seeing this, Wen Jiu did not delay and walked straight to a line to wait. It was not until 8:30 that all the freshmen arrived. We are about to go in. Listen carefully, no loud noises, no looking around. Hearing this, the chattering freshmen immediately quieted down and followed the teacher in obediently. After walking for a while, they finally arrived at the wide and bright auditorium. Wen Jiu quietly glanced at the podium and found that the female teacher who had helped her solve the problem before was also there. Before she could continue to observe, the principal walked to the front and began to speak. Welcome to the 3047 Academy. From now on, you will be the reserve soldiers of the major military regions of the Federation. But if you want to become a reserve soldier, it is not enough to just sign up. You must go through a series of training and stand out. The teacher looked at everyone sternly. I believe everyone knows the cruelty of our training, so everyone must grit their teeth and persevere. I believe that hard work will definitely pay off. Finally, I wish you all a happy life in the future. After the principal and other teachers finished speaking, the freshmen were taken out by the teachers. Wen Jiu's queue was at the front, and soon followed the teacher to a building. This is your dormitory, 2 people per room. Wen Jiu lowered her head and thought about something, but when she heard the teacher's voice sounded familiar, she looked up. It turned out that it was really an acquaintance. The leader teacher was the one who was at the registration office a few days ago. But Zhao Sen didn't look at her, just stood upright with his hands behind his back and continued. The dormitories have been assigned. You now have 15 minutes to find your dormitory, and then change into school uniforms, and come down to assemble. As soon as this was said, the students present looked at each other. 15 minutes, not only to find the dormitory, but also to change into school uniforms, and come down to assemble. How can this time be enough? Zhao Sen squinted his eyes, and looked at these motionless little carrots in front of him. He cleared his throat, and was about to give a lecture, when he saw a thin figure running quickly from the queue into the gate. Until her figure disappeared, the others were still standing there with surprise on their faces. What are you still standing for? Are you waiting for me to serve you wine and tea? Zhao Sen shouted, and the others reacted and scattered, running towards the gate. Zhao Sen secretly sighed that these children still have a long way to go from being naughty children to well-trained reserve soldiers. Wen Jiu wanted to run away when Zhao Sen finished speaking, but the others were still not moving, so she hesitated for a moment. As a result, seeing Zhao Sen's face getting darker and darker, Wen Jiu suddenly understood and rushed into the dormitory building. As soon as she rushed into the gate, she was greeted by a huge holographic projection, which was scrolling and displaying everyone's dormitory assignment. Wen Jiu quickly glanced at it, and her information was just displayed on it. Wen Jiu, 12 years old, female, dormitory A3, 505. Wen Jiu remembered that she had quietly observed the environment on the way here, and A3 was the third building on the left. So she ran out of the gate on the left and went straight to the A3 building. When she ran into 505 panting, there was a girl who was also pale and almost out of breath in the dormitory. Wen Jiu nodded to each other while slowing down. Both of them knew that now was not a good time to introduce themselves, so the girl just nodded in response. When Wen Jiu hurriedly put on her school uniform and returned to Zhao Sen first looked at her in surprise and then reported the time, 13 minutes and 49 seconds. Hearing that she had not exceeded the time, Wen Jiu sat down on the ground to rest and wait for other classmates to return. However, when everyone came back, except Wen Jiu, only the other two had not exceeded the time. So Zhao Sen glanced at them and said, except for the 3 people who did not exceed the time just now, the rest of them will run around the playground 25 laps. After the words fell, everyone didn't dare to stay where they were for too long, and they all started running forward. Wen Jiu looked at the others who ran away and secretly rejoiced. It turned out that it was good to complete the task. As a result, Zhao Sen looked at them with a smile the next second and said, you 3, run around the playground 20 laps. Thank you all for your recommendation votes and collections. Thank you very much. 030 please use more recommendation votes to hit me. Don't pity me, because I'm a newcomer. Cack. Chapter 7, a world where only dark cuisine exists. It wasn't just Wen Jiu's team that was asked to run. There were at least thousands of students running at the same time. Wen Jiu slowly followed the crowd, thanks to the ability to escape that she had developed from picking up trash. At least she didn't feel particularly uncomfortable when she ran the first 5 laps. After a few laps, fewer and fewer students were able to run, and many began to slow down or even walk. It was already the 10th lap, and Wen Jiu began to feel that she was running out of energy, but she still maintained her previous speed and moved forward at a steady pace. By the 15th lap, sweat was dripping from Wen Jiu's forehead, and the clothes on her back had long been wet with sweat and stuck to her skin. She just gritted her teeth and jogged forward step by step. Even though sweat was running down her eyebrows and into the corners of her eyes, she tried to keep her eyes open and move forward. Until later, she felt that her legs were as heavy as if they were filled with lead. If someone said that she would stop now, she would definitely fall to the ground immediately. Finally, she made it to the 19th lap. She was already feeling a little dizzy, but there were still about 30 people who were running forward like her. Not long after, Wen Jiu felt that her vision was gradually becoming blurry and her legs were moving stiffly like machines. Just when she was about to give up, she felt an inexplicable force in her body, which made her feel that her limbs were much lighter, as if she had washed away her fatigue in a hot spring. Seeing that one student after another had reached the finish line, she didn't have time to think about anything else, so she just gritted her teeth and ran forward. Finally, she finished the physical training that the teacher suddenly arranged. The teacher casually gave her a bottle of nutrient solution to restore her strength, and also told her that she could go to the cafeteria for lunch now. The other party also kindly told her that she could get free fried chicken in the cafeteria today, but it was limited, so she had to hurry up. She had been so hungry that she couldn't stand it anymore, so after drinking the nutrient solution, she walked quickly towards the cafeteria. Well, she asked a helpful classmate about the location of the cafeteria, otherwise she really didn't know where it was. So after thanking him, she hurried to the cafeteria. Fortunately, it was not far from the cafeteria, and she arrived at the cafeteria smoothly soon. Detecting someone coming, the glass door slid silently to both sides. It was noon at this time, and the cafeteria was crowded. Everyone lined up in front of each window in an orderly manner waiting for food. This made Wen Jiu feel a little familiar. When she was sent to study by her master, she also lined up in the cafeteria to get food at mealtime. Wen Jiu quickly found the window where the limited free fried chicken was received, so she took the tray from the shelf next to her, walked to the back of the line and started queuing. When she thought that she would be able to eat the delicious fried chicken soon, Wen Jiu was in a very happy mood. The students in front of her left one after another with their plates, and before leaving, they were stamped with a square stamp by the person in charge of distributing fried chicken. It looked quite like a pork stamp. Wen Jiu was lost in thought when it was her turn to get fried chicken. She walked to the transparent window and found that the staff inside were not the aunts and uncles in the cafeteria, but students wearing school uniforms like her. The only difference was that the people inside were wearing masks and aprons. But Wen Jiu didn't ask too much. When it was her turn, she handed over the tray. After the person inside looked at it, he quickly put a piece of fried chicken wrapped tightly in tin foil on her tray. After getting the fried chicken, Wen Jiu quickly found an empty seat and sat down, ready to have a big meal. She peeled off the tin foil with interest, but there was no golden fried chicken inside as she imagined. Not only was the chicken fried half yellow and half black, but there were even a few chicken feathers on it. Wen Jiu's originally smiling face collapsed immediately, and she pulled off a chicken leg to take a look. What kind of skill does it take to achieve the effect of being burnt on the outside and bleeding inside? And the fishy smell was not removed. Without even tasting it, Wen Jiu could smell a pungent smell. Is this a scam? What kind of fried chicken is this? Wen Jiu wanted to go to the cafeteria staff to argue, but when she looked around, she found that the food on their trays could not be called food. Blue stir-fried vegetables, meat that was boiled into mud, food that was burnt to the point that the original shape could not be seen, and rice that looked like porridge, but was actually added with too much water. For Wen Jiu, these things were hard to swallow just by looking at them. But these classmates ate without blinking, as if they had long been accustomed to it. Wouldn't the cafeteria only sell these dark dishes? Wen Jiu was a little panicked. As a foodie, she was now extremely scared. She went to each window with trepidation and took a look. If she didn't look, she could still have some expectations. Only when she took a look did she realize. Is this a world where only dark dishes exist? Wen Jiu felt that she was in a complicated mood. After sitting back in her seat, she fell into a daze. Are you Wen Jiu? Wen Jiu, who was in a daze, was suddenly patted on the shoulder. She looked back and saw a thin boy staring at her. Are you Wen Jiu? Li Shan'an asked again, his face full of impatience. Wen Jiu looked at him and nodded gently. If you are, come with me. You owe tuition fees, right? Teacher, you arranged for you to work in our cafeteria to pay off your debts. Li Shan'an put his hands in his pockets and glanced at Wen Jiu. Wen Jiu thought for a moment, but she didn't know who Teacher Yu was, so she asked, who is Teacher Yu? Yu Ruman, the very beautiful one. Li Shan'an was too lazy to explain too much. After confirming that it was a good person, he turned and walked towards a silver iron gate. Wen Jiu got up first and followed him to the iron gate, while quickly analyzing in his mind. The very beautiful teacher should be the female teacher who helped her solve the registration problem a few days ago. She said that she wanted her to work to pay off her debts. It should be that the tuition problem has not been solved, so she wants her to work and study. After Wen Jiu followed Li Shan'an into the iron gate, he walked all the way and entered an office. Here we are. I hope all the little cuties can give me more recommendation votes. I wish you all a happy day. If you like it, please click on the collection. I will be very grateful for your collection and recommendation votes. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 8 I'll just give you this money and leave me to starve. Chapter 8 I'll give you the money and I'll just eat the northwest wind. There were 3 boys sitting in the office who looked about 14 or 15 years old. When they saw Ishan and Wen Jiu coming in, their laughter and jokes suddenly disappeared and they all looked at Wen Jiu. Are you the new student that teacher you arranged? The strongest boy among the 3 spoke first, sitting on the sofa with his legs crossed and looking at Wen Jiu. Wen Jiu did not respond. She calmly put her hands behind her back. No matter which teacher introduced you, you must know the rules when you come to our canteen student department. She saw that Wen Jiu did not say anything, thinking that she was scared, and immediately sneered disdainfully. In the future, you just need to come here to punch in at lunch and dinner time every day. If you owe a debt, the school will deduct half of your monthly salary. The remaining half will be automatically sent to your Star Network account by the school. But according to our rules, you must take out half and hand it over to us. Do you understand? Wen Jiu lowered her eyes and thought in her heart, if I give this money to you, I will starve. Although she did not know how much the salary for working in the canteen was, how many star coins could she get after deducting half and half? So Wen Jiu raised her head. What if I don't want to pay? As soon as he finished speaking, everyone else started laughing, as if they had heard a big joke. Little sister, don't joke like this with your brothers. She felt that he was about to laugh to tears. But Wen Jiu still repeated with a serious face, what if I don't want to pay? Seeing that she seemed to be asking seriously, several people gradually stopped laughing and revealed a fierce atmosphere. Don't pay? Either get beaten or don't work here. Wen Jiu lowered her head again. Several people thought that she was the same as those poor students before, who dared to ask, but did not dare to resist. As a result, the next second Wen Jiu looked up and said with a smile, excuse me, I don't want to pay. After that, Wen Jiu took a step to go back. She sat on the sofa and looked at her thin figure and sneered again. Poor guy, do you think that this matter can be solved by saying that you don't want to pay? Wen Jiu did not turn back because of his ridicule, but walked faster and faster. This made very unhappy, so he winked at the other 2 people, and the 2 immediately stood up and rushed towards Wen Jiu. Seeing that they were about to rush in front of Wen Jiu, the 2 men swung their fists with determination. Unexpectedly, Wen Jiu suddenly turned around and whipped the 2 men's arms, leaving a bloody mark on their raised arms. Senior, this is a bit unethical, isn't it? Wen Jiu still kept smiling, but his grey blue eyes were full of coldness when he looked at them. The 2 were caught off guard and whipped, and they were a little angry. Soon they swung their fists again, but this time their fists suddenly ignited orange-red flames, and the temperature around them also rose. It was the first time that Wen Jiu saw someone use superpowers, and she was inexplicably excited. But she did not take it lightly. After quickly retreating a distance, she whipped again. This time the whip did not fall on the arms of the 2, but wrapped around their legs. Wen Jiu pulled hard and tripped the 2 running men to the ground in an instant. They came into close contact with the floor. They even split. After seeing them fall, Wen Jiu couldn't help but sigh in his heart. I didn't expect the rope he picked up to be so useful. However, before Wen Jiu could observe for a while, a gust of wind suddenly blew towards her. Wen Jiu reacted immediately and wanted to turn her head to avoid it, but the gust of wind was too fast, brushing past her face and then hitting the wall behind her. Snap! The stinging feeling was like a needle prick, and warm blood dripped down her cheek. If you ask me, a waste like you. Before could finish his words, Wen Jiu rushed towards him with a dagger. But didn't take her seriously and continued to shoot several gusts of wind at Wen Jiu. Although Wen Jiu dodged flexibly, one of them still cut her arm. But the stinging feeling made her more excited, and she sped up her movement again, attacking like a ghost. This made feel alarm bells ringing in his heart, and an inexplicable sense of panic surged into his heart. He instinctively wanted to close the door and hide, but he didn't know when Wen Jiu flashed in front of him, holding a dagger, and asked him with a smile, do you want to close the door? How about I help you? This sentence made shudder. Before he could react, Wen Jiu's dagger was close to his neck. The fear of his skin being cut made Shigang unable to control his emotions. I was wrong. I was wrong. But Wen Jiu did not let him go because of his begging for mercy. Instead, he kicked him into the office, then closed the door and looked at him with a smile. Then Shigang's screams continued to sound, scaring Li Shan'an outside the door and the two people on the ground into panic. It was Li Shan'an who reacted first and called the teacher with the wisdom ring. It was now dinner time. Zhao Senbin was eating in the cafeteria, but after receiving the call, he rushed to the scene. Zhao Sen's mood suddenly became heavy. What's going on? Li Shan'an was the one who was least affected. He pointed at the office door and trembled. Zhao Sen felt something was wrong and quickly opened the door. There was a little girl inside with her back to him. The more he looked, the more familiar she seemed, so he asked tentatively, Wen Jiu. Wen Jiu had heard the noise outside a long time ago. She turned around with a smile and said, Teacher, what's the matter? Li Shan'an didn't dare to look at Zhao Sen's cold eyes. He just lowered his head and whispered, Shigang was kicked into the office by her, and then. He didn't dare to say the rest of the words. He and the other two heard Shigang's screams with their own ears. Zhao Sen ignored Li Shan'an's words. He first took out the medical kit he carried with him, then squatted down and asked softly, Student Wen Jiu, have you seen Student Shigang? Wen Jiu was like an innocent child at this time. He nodded obediently and pointed to a wooden cabinet in the room. Good boy. Zhao Sen touched her head to comfort her, then stood up and walked towards the wooden cabinet. Then Zhao Sen stood up, took a deep breath, grabbed the handle, and opened the wooden cabinet. Thank you all for your support. Please give me more recommendation votes CAC. If you like it, please click to collect it. Your support is my motivation. Like 030 number. I don't know what happened to this chapter. It was automatically deleted a lot by the cute review. The little author has tried his best to make up for the deleted parts, and there may still be some places that are not smooth. If you little angels find any incoherent or incoherent places while reading the text, please leave a message to the little author to remind ORZ. Chapter 9, A Fortune for a Long Time. There was a trembling man squatting inside. Shigang, come out. Even though the man covered his face, Zhao Sen could recognize that this was Shigang from the 3rd grade. Shigang carefully moved his hand away, and when he saw the person coming, he was so excited that he almost cried. Wow, Teacher Zhao. Shigang wanted to get out of the wooden cabinet, but when he saw Wen Jiu, who was smiling at him behind Zhao Sen, he instantly shrank back. Zhao Sen was even more speechless when he saw him like this. Come out quickly and follow me to the teaching office. Teacher Zhao, it hurts, Shigang said with a sob. Am I going to die? However, Zhao Sen looked him up and down. Stop pretending and come out quickly. Shigang wanted to tell Wen Jiu about his evil deeds, but he just moved a little in the cabinet and broke out in a cold sweat. Zhao Sen urged him again impatiently. In his opinion, Shigang didn't have any scars on his body. How dare he cry out in pain? But what he didn't know was that Wen Jiu deliberately didn't leave any marks. Every punch hit the most painful acupuncture points on Shigang's body. Seeing this, Shigang had to endure the pain and crawl out of the wooden cabinet. But every step he took was unbearable. In the end, Li Shan'an helped him walk slowly to the teaching office. Tell me, what happened? Yu Ruman glanced at them and said, don't think about lying. The surveillance will be called in soon. Shigang was about to complain when Yu Ruman glared at him. Then he watched Yu Ruman pull Wen Jiu, who had been lowering her head, over and let her sit on the soft sofa. She also poured her a cup of hot water to warm her up. Little sister, tell your sister what happened. Yu Ruman sat next to Wen Jiu, crossed her long legs, and looked at her. Wen Jiu whispered, they bullied me. Shigang had been bullying people because his relative was a teacher in charge of the cafeteria, so Yu Ruman had heard about these things, but she had not found any evidence to clean up the mess. So she continued to ask Wen Jiu, what happened next? Then I fought back. Wen Jiu could have pretended to be innocent, but if the surveillance was on, she would be exposed. But in this case, she was acting in self-defense, so Wen Jiu did not intend to pretend to be innocent. After listening to this, Yu found a medical kit from the cabinet. She first cleaned the blood on Wen Jiu's wound, then took out a tube of ointment, squeezed out some, and gently applied it on it. Then Wen Jiu watched his wound covered with transparent ointment, and began to heal visibly. Here's this for you. Don't hurt yourself next time you fight. As soon as Yu finished speaking, Zhao Sen walked in. He took out a metal ball from his pocket, and threw it to Yu. The other party caught it steadily, and after pressing the switch, the metal ball opened in her hand, and a beam of light and shadow shot out from it to form a light curtain, and then the surveillance video began to play. The video recorded the scenes from Li Shan'an finding Wen Jiu in the cafeteria to the two of them walking into the office. Yu pulled her chair and sat down, yawning nonchalantly. Until the scene of Wen Jiu walking out of the office, she and Zhao Sen thought that Wen Jiu must have been bullied by Shigang. But after a few minutes, they found out that they were wrong. Yu looked at Wen Jiu's flexible skills and precise movements in the picture, and her phoenix eyes became brighter and brighter. She really picked up a good seedling. When the video was finished, Shigang cried and said, "Teacher Yu, you saw it, we really did nothing." However, Yu sneered and looked at him. "We did nothing? You four teamed up to bully a freshman, and you call that nothing?" Hearing this, Shigang shrank his neck in frustration. The person who beat him so hard that he couldn't move could be called a freshman? But he didn't dare to say it out loud. "Okay, Wen Jiu, you go back to the dormitory first." Yu resumed her charming and moving posture. "You guys just wait for teacher Wan to pick you up." Wen Jiu responded obediently, and did not forget to close the door when she left the teaching office. She had just taken a few steps when she heard the sound of Yu beating people from inside. This force was much heavier than when she just attacked. Even the screams of Shigang and others were louder. Wen Jiu didn't stay for too long, and went straight back to his dormitory. The roommate she met earlier was now taking a nap on the bed, so Wen Jiu quietly closed the door and walked to her bed. She had been busy putting on her school uniform and returning to the team, and had not paid attention to the environment in the dormitory. Wen Jiu sat on the bed and glanced around. Although the furnishings here were a bit simple, they could at least shelter from the wind and rain, and there was no need to worry about being flooded. Moreover, all kinds of items were equipped quite well. There were 2 sets of school uniforms for summer and winter, 4 sets of bedding, and some daily necessities. Wen Jiu was very satisfied with this, and then she looked at her bedside table, and then she saw a small box with a freshman handbook underneath. She first picked up the box and opened it, and there was a bronze wisdom ring inside. Then Wen Jiu checked the freshman handbook again, and then she realized that the college had equipped each freshman with a wisdom ring. Reading is really good. Wen Jiu decisively put the wisdom ring on her finger, and as soon as she put it on, she felt a weak electric current surging in her body. Then she tried to control it with her mind, and saw a small light curtain popped out from the wisdom ring. "A new user has been detected. Do you want to bind the user?" A mechanical and cold voice suddenly sounded in her mind. Wen Jiu was stunned for only a moment before she reacted. She tried to click on the light screen with her finger, and the screen changed quickly. "Start binding the user. Please set your personal information." Wen Jiu followed the instructions step by step and slowly operated. She felt like an old man who was out of touch with the times. It took a long time to complete the information entry, and then it was time to set the personal image. "Please set the Star Network personal image of user 9. The general network of the Federation is a star network. In addition to the necessary real information, the user's nickname and personal image can be set at will." So Wen Jiu entered the nickname 9 without thinking, and then she began to happily create characters. But just as she browsed through the available appearances and costumes, a message suddenly popped up on the light screen. 3047 Zhao Sen requested to add you as a friend. Added successfully. Wen Jiu thought Zhao Sen was just here to add a friend, but he popped up a bunch of messages. Her character creation interface was stuck, and she returned to the normal desktop. 3047 Zhao Sen, the matter between you and Shigang has been resolved. 3047 Zhao Sen, from now on, you will be responsible for a window in the cafeteria. After the college deducts the tuition, the rest of the income will be transferred to your Star Network account. 3047 Zhao SEN. I will send you the specific work of the cafeteria later. The working hours are 11 o'clock to 1300 hours and 1700 hours to 1900 hours. 3047 Zhao SEN. You know that our college has self-selected courses? Just avoid working hours to choose courses. I didn't expect Zhao SEN to be so nagging, but Wen Jiu still replied to the message. Family Wealth 9. Okay, Teacher Zhao. 3047 Zhao SEN. Nice name. After replying the message, Wen Jiu did not go to edit the characters anymore, but continued to flip through the freshman handbook, preparing to make plans for her upcoming part-time work and study life. Hey, you're back. The girl who had been sleeping soundly in bed finally woke up and looked at Wen Jiu with sleepy eyes. Today's update has been delivered. I hope everyone can vote more CAC. Thank you so much. I also thank the little cuties who clicked the collection. If you like it, please support me. 030. Chapter 10. Yangchan Noodles and Silkworm Potatoes 1. Unlike Wen Jiu's wheat-colored skin, the other person had fair skin and delicate features, like a doll. The girl on the bed opposite rubbed her eyes and sat up. Hello, I'm Kao Shishi. Hello, I'm Wen Jiu. Seeing her friendly attitude, Wen Jiu generously introduced himself. Kao Shishi was very familiar, and even Wen Jiu, who claimed to be a chatterbox, felt that he couldn't talk as much as her. Which district are you from? Jiu, what courses are you going to take? I'm almost exhausted after running 25 laps during the day. Wen Jiu was operating on the screen while referring to the freshman handbook while listening to Kao Shishi's various chattering. However, Kao Shishi didn't mean any harm, so Wen Jiu would take the time to answer a few words. After completing the operation, Wen Jiu finally submitted the courses she had chosen. Kao Shishi next to her widened her eyes and asked her, "You actually chose so many courses? Do you plan to be an armed mecha soldier in the future?" Armed mecha soldier? Wen Jiu was a little confused. She had not learned about this knowledge yet, purely out of the mentality that the tuition fees have been paid and should not be wasted. She wanted to learn all the courses she was interested in. Seeing her confused face, Kao Shishi enthusiastically began to do popular science work. We are now reserve soldiers. After we have completed 5 years of study and passed the assessment, we will choose a branch of the army. There are 3 major categories: commanders, armed mecha soldiers and logistics soldiers. As for the more detailed branches, I don't know what they are. Wen Jiu nodded. It turned out that she could be upgraded to a high level branch in the future, but she has not thought about her long-term military career. She only thought about how to make money to pay off her debts. Today is the first day of freshman's enrollment, and there are no classes in the afternoon. So Wen Jiu stayed in the dormitory and chatted with Kao Shishi for an afternoon. At nearly 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Wen Jiu headed for the cafeteria. Zhao Sen had sent the cafeteria work instructions over, which was actually to do dishes, cooking, and serving meals at fixed time periods. It should be assigned a position after Wen Jiu reported, but after Shigang's incident, after the teachers discussed it, Wen Jiu became a window manager alone. She could also recruit students to work here, but the prerequisite was that she had to pay them. However, running a window by herself was not difficult for Wen Jiu. She used to love food very much, but the master always asked them to reduce their appetite so as to practice fasting. But Wen Jiu felt that people had to eat to live, and it would be meaningless if they didn't eat. So she often cooked food for herself in private. After Wen Jiu entered the cafeteria, the senior student who came to receive her this time was much gentler. He took her to the assigned window and talked about many work matters before leaving. Wen Jiu looked around and found that the space here was relatively small. The kitchen utensils and stoves looked like they had been used for a long time, and there were even oil stains on them. The basic seasonings were all there, but the outer packaging had not been opened. She walked to the storage shelf and took a look. There were not many ingredients on it, except for a large bag of flour, a large bag of potatoes and eggs, and a large handful of green onions. Wen Jiu remembered that the student who had just received her said that the ingredients were distributed uniformly every week by the teacher who managed the cafeteria. and the ingredients distributed at each window were different. So she didn't think much about it. She cleaned up the place first, and then started to think about what food she could make with these ingredients. After thinking about it, she thought she could make some plain noodles and silkworm potatoes. Wen Jiu did it right away. She first took out the right amount of flour, water and salt to make a smooth dough, then peeled and cut the potatoes one by one, and soaked them in water. Then she washed the green onions. The green onions here were twice as thick as the green onions before. In order to make the food more beautiful, Wen Jiu patiently cut them into small pieces. She cut a full bowl of chopped green onions, and stopped when she thought it was enough. Thinking about mixing silkworm potatoes, Wen Jiu thought she could make some chili oil first. So she started looking for ingredients in the kitchen. Wen Jiu found a bag of chili powder and white sesame seeds, poured some of them into a bowl, and then heated the oil, and poured them on top. The simple version of chili oil was ready, but there was still a while before the dough was ready, so Wen Jiu picked up a frying pan, and fried a large plate of fried eggs one by one and let them dry on the plate. When the time was almost up, Wen Jiu picked up the rolling pin and deftly rolled the dough into a thin and thick dough. Then he picked up the kitchen knife, and cut it into noodles of uniform thickness. Now the most basic staple food was ready. There were still 20 minutes before the meal at 5 o'clock, so Wen Jiu simply made herself a bowl of noodles to practice. While waiting for the water in the pot to boil, Wen Jiu first took out a large bowl, washed it clean, and began to add seasoning. Because there was no lard, she could only use sesame oil, light soy sauce and salt to simply season it. Then Wen Jiu grabbed a bowl of noodles and put it into the pot. After a few minutes, she quickly took it out and put it in the bowl. She scooped a large spoonful of noodle soup on it and finally sprinkled some chopped green onions. The students at other windows were busy. Only Wen Jiu was leisurely eating noodles. She thought to herself that it was a pity that there was no lard, otherwise this bowl of noodles would be more fragrant, but compared to those dark dishes, this bowl of noodles can be said to be a delicacy on earth. Wen Jiu was enjoying her meal when suddenly someone came out and knocked on the transparent glass at the window. Jiu, I heard from Teacher Zhao that you work in the cafeteria, so I came to support you. Kyoshi showed a sweet smile, pointed to the bowl of noodles held by Wen Jiu and continued, I want a bowl of this. Do you have any other dishes? Give me one too. Wen Jiu nodded and swallowed the last mouthful of noodles, then put down the bowl and started to get busy. She first took out a proper amount of potato strips from the basin where the potatoes were soaked, then lit another large pot and poured oil to heat it up. When the oil was almost heated, Wen Jiu threw the long potato strips in. Then she grabbed a handful of noodles and put them in the hot water that was used to cook noodles before and started cooking. When the potato strips were fried, the noodles on the other side were almost cooked. So Wen Jiu first scooped up the potato strips with a colander and hung them aside, and then scooped the noodles into the bowl. Wen Jiu skillfully poured the soup on top and sprinkled chopped green onions on it, and finally picked up a golden fried egg and put it on top. Wow, what is this? Kyoshi took the bowl of noodles with curiosity, and the aroma that hit her made her a little confused for a moment. She actually didn't like eating very much because these meals were too bad, so she always relied on drinking nutrient solution to fill her stomach. But this aroma made her feel her stomach growling for a rare time. Yangchan noodles. Wen Jiu answered her while pouring potato strips into a large bowl and began to mix the potatoes. She added various ingredients skillfully, and her hands moved in one go. After mixing, Wen Jiu put the Xiankan potatoes into a small bowl and then garnished it with some chopped green onions before handing it to Kyoshi. This smells so good too. What is this? Kyoshi smelled the aroma that was completely different from the previous Yangchan noodles and immediately felt her mouth watering. This is Xiankan potatoes. Go try it first to see if it tastes good and then come to pay. The main reason was that Wen Jiu hadn't thought about the price yet and thought that Kyoshi would not run away, so he simply let Kyoshi take it away first and then pay after he thought about the price. So Kyoshi thanked him with a smile on her face, then quickly took the two bowls and found a seat to sit down. Chapter 11, Plain Noodles and Silkworm Potatoes 2. Kyoshi looked at the bowl of steaming hot noodles, carefully picked up a chopstick and tasted it. Although the noodles were soaked in soup, they were very chewy, and you could feel the taste of repeated rubbing and polishing while chewing. Take another bite of the golden fried egg, and the orange-red egg liquid will flow out slightly. It is entangled with the fragrant soup, making Kyoshi unable to stop. She has never eaten such delicious food. Kyoshi ate noodles one mouthful after another with her head down, which made several students who just walked in from the cafeteria very curious. When they came closer, they smelled an attractive aroma they had never smelled before. "Classmate, what are you eating?" Kyoshi did not answer them, but pulled out her hand and pointed at Wen Jiu's window. Because she had eaten all the noodles, she was drinking the noodle soup slowly. Wan Dalang and others couldn't help swallowing their saliva just by watching her drink the soup. So a few people walked to Wen Jiu's window and asked, "Did that female classmate buy her food here?" Wen Jiu looked at them and nodded, then said, "Yangchan noodles are 20 star coins a bowl, and Chyankan potatoes are 15 star coins a portion." These two foods were names they had never heard of, because the cafeteria sold burnt potatoes, dark water spinach, and fried chicken that was bursting but not cooked. But Wan Dalan paid with Ziji without hesitation. "Give me one of each." The other two were a little hesitant at first. They looked at Wen Jiu and were very unfamiliar with him, worried that they would be cheated. But they thought about it again. Kyoshi ate so deliciously just now, there shouldn't be any problem. So the two of them also paid happily and waited for Wen Jiu to serve the food. Wen Jiu's movements were so fast that the three people were shocked. They were originally worried that there was only Wen Jiu at this window and whether they would have to wait for a long time. But she finished 3 bowls of Yangchan noodles and 3 portions of Chyankan potatoes in a short while. So Wang Dalang and the others took them with great expectations and hurried to their seats. After sitting down, Wan Dalan looked at the yellow Chyankan potatoes and decisively picked up a piece and put it in his mouth. The texture was slightly crispy, and the aroma of the chili oil and chopped green onions blended perfectly, instantly capturing Wan Dalan's taste buds. It was so delicious. Wan Dalan had never eaten such delicious food since he was a child. The taste made him unbelievable, and he picked up another piece. The stimulation of the chili instantly surged to the tip of his tongue, and he was so spicy that he sweated a little, but he felt very refreshed. The two people around him, one couldn't stop picking up chopsticks to eat noodles, and the other couldn't stop eating Chyankan potatoes. At the end of the meal, the corners of the three people's mouths were red from the spiciness, but they were all conquered by the stimulating taste and felt very satisfied. The fragrant taste of Yangchan noodles made them unable to stop. The chewy noodles were chewed in their mouths, and the aroma of noodles kept wafting in their mouths. By the time Wang Dalang finished the last mouthful of soup and put down the bowl, the two people who had been sitting next to him had already gone to Wen Jiu's window to buy again. Wang Dalang stared at the empty bowls on the table for a moment, then rushed to the window and said to Wen Jiu, "Chef, give me another serving of each." "No. 2 servings. 2 servings of each." Because Wan Dalang and his friends later sat in the place closest to Wen Jiu's window and ate like crazy. When it was time for dinner, many students came to Wen Jiu's window to buy food because of the aroma. They all came with the mentality of trying it out, and some even thought that the food Wan Dalang and his friends ate was flavored with something like flavor enhancers. As a result, when these people tasted the food made by Wen Jiu, they all quickly finished eating and ran back to the window to buy again. As time went by, more and more people lined up at Wen Jiu's window. After eating a bowl of plain noodles and 2 servings of canned potatoes, Kyoshi took the initiative to run to the kitchen to help Wen Jiu. Wen Jiu was responsible for making the meals, and she helped pass the prepared meals to those classmates. "I want 2 servings of Chyankan potatoes. 3 bowls of plain noodles, thank you. 5 servings of each. Don't push me behind you. What's the hurry? Can you buy so much food? Can we who only buy 1 serving go first?" The cafeteria, which was originally quiet for dining, now made some noise. Kyoshi hurriedly shouted, "Don't be in a hurry. Please wait patiently." Wen Jiu naturally heard the noise outside. Because there were many people ordering, she can now mix 5 servings of Cheyenne potatoes at a time. She counted the remaining ingredients while doing her hand movements skillfully. Shishi, there are about 34 servings of Cheyenne potatoes and 18 servings of plain noodles left. Wen Jiu looked at Kyo Shishi and said, you count the number of people. If there are more, we won't sell them. Let them come early tomorrow. Kyo Shishi immediately said to the outside after hearing this, please pay attention to the students in the queue. There are 34 servings of Cheyenne potatoes and 18 servings of plain noodles left. As soon as the words fell, the students at the end of the line suddenly panicked. Fairy, can you ask the chef to be kind? We haven't eaten yet. That's right. Why are they sold out so quickly? Kyo Shishi looked at Wen Jiu at a loss. The noise of the crowd was very loud. Wen Jiu, who was cooking noodles, shook his head at Kyo Shishi after hearing it. She also wanted to sell more and make more money, but she had prepared so many ingredients today, and it would take nearly an hour to make handmade noodles. So Kyo Shishi said to the outside again, we don't have enough ingredients. You can come and line up early tomorrow at noon. With that said, the people behind couldn't say anything and could only hope that the people in front would buy fewer portions. When Wen Jiu was busy, Zhao Sen and Yu Rumen also came to the cafeteria. Yu Rumen originally wanted Shigang to leave the student department of the cafeteria, but she couldn't find any handle on his relative who was in charge. In the end, it was adjusted that Wen Jiu opened a window alone, and the income was directly divided with the college. Shigang and others continued to manage other working students, but prohibited them from collecting protection fees. This decision seemed to have allowed Wen Jiu to avoid being bullied by Shigang and the others, but in fact, she was still being bullied as a newcomer who would buy from a window alone. Moreover, Yu Rumen didn't even know if Wen Jiu could cook, so she ran to the cafeteria as soon as she finished her work and happened to meet Zhao Sen, who was also here to take care of Wen Jiu on the way, and the two simply came together. Alas, I don't know if Wen Jiu can cook. Yu Rumen was a little worried along the way, always feeling that she had not helped Wen Jiu to fight for the rights she deserved. Zhao Sen comforted her, even if she can't cook, we can secretly find a student who can cook to help her. Both of them were a little worried, and after entering the cafeteria, they began to look for Wen Jiu's window. However, they looked around and didn't see Wen Jiu, only a long line of students in front of a window. Isn't Wen Jiu here? Yu Rumen was puzzled. She should be here. I saw her clocking in at the student department of the cafeteria, Zhao Sen said. So the two walked around again and returned to the window with so many people. They walked through the crowd and came to the glass window. Only then did they see that the petite figure cooking noodles inside was Wen Jiu. Today's update has been delivered. Please collect it. If you like it, please vote for it. Kak, love it. Chapter 12, Yangchan Noodles and Silkworm Potatoes 3. Looking at the small figure inside, he was skillfully putting seasoning into the bowl and then turned around and operated 4 colanders to scoop up the noodles at the same time. This made Yu Rumen and Zhao Sen stunned. The two repeatedly confirmed the person in front of them, but in the end they had to admit that this skilled person like an old chef was Wen Jiu. Wen Jiu had just handed a few bowls of noodles to Kyo Shishi and happened to see Yu Rumen and Zhao Sen standing outside the window. Because he was in a hurry to work, Wen Jiu just waved at them. After saying hello, she continued to be busy. Although Yu Rumen and Zhao Sen were very surprised by her skilled skills, they did not disturb her too much. The two saw that there were too many people queuing here and wanted to go to other windows to get food. But when they saw the bowls in the hands of those students, they swallowed their saliva inexplicably. The wonderful aroma that they had never smelled before attracted them to join the long line. After queuing for a while, when it was Yu Rumen and the others' turn, there were just 2 servings of Cheyenne potatoes left. After taking the small bowls of Cheyenne potatoes, the two found an empty seat and sat down. It looks pretty good. Yu Rumen picked up a piece of Cheyenne potato and looked at it. The fried potato strips were wrapped in bright red chili oil and dotted with a few chopped green onions. The tempting smell came from the potato from time to time, which attracted Yu Rumen to take a bite. With just one bite, she was stunned and chewed the potato carefully with a dull look. Seeing her like this, Zhao Xian couldn't help but ask, "Is it not delicious?" He was different from ordinary students. He would occasionally go to restaurants outside to eat. It's just that the taste of restaurants outside is only a little better than that of the cafeteria. Yu Rumen was even more different. As a school leader, it was common for her to go on business trips and socialize. She had also been to many big hotels to taste delicious food. But this Cheyenne potato directly defeated those so-called hotel chefs. "No, this is really delicious." Yu Rumen came back to her senses from the impact of the fragrance. "Try it." This taste was something Yu Rumen had never tasted before. She often saw descriptions of delicious food in the past materials. But now she finally knows what it feels like to taste delicious food. Zhao Xian picked up the Cheyenne potato and put it in his mouth to taste it. He was also stunned. After the first bite, the spicy smell of chili oil hit the taste buds, and then the crispy potato stimulated a sweet taste. The fragrance lingers on the lips and teeth. This taste is too delicious. Zhao Xian, who has always been introverted, couldn't help but sigh. But he only said this sentence and continued to eat the Cheyenne potato attentively, completely immersed in the world of food. The two of them didn't have the leisure to discuss until they finished the Cheyenne potato in the bowl. "I think Wen Jiu's technology can keep the canteen running just by selling these Cheyenne potatoes," Zhao Xian said first. Yu Rumen shook her head. "I think she can bring us more than just this surprise. We haven't tasted the sold out Yangtian noodles yet. But this Cheyenne potato alone brought enough surprises to the two of them. Because the dishes sent out from each window were marked, Wen Jiu and Kaioshishi had to stay to recycle the dishes. So Yu Rumen and the others didn't look for Wen Jiu for long, and left the cafeteria after putting the dishes in the recycling bin at the window. Wen Jiu cleaned up the grease in the kitchen first, and then ran to the window, and walked back to the kitchen with the recycling bin. Although Wen Jiu likes to cook, she actually hates washing dishes and pots. But there is no other way at the moment. What's the point of washing dishes to make money? So Wen Jiu resignedly put the recycling bin next to the sink and started washing dishes one by one. Kaioshishi, who had just returned from the toilet, saw Wen Jiu grunting and washing dishes. She was a little confused. "Is there no dishwasher robot here?" Wen Jiu shook his head and said, "No, I have to increase the business volume before I can apply to the school." This made Kaioshishi speechless. "Can I buy one myself? It should be possible, but I don't have money." Wen Jiu didn't think there was anything wrong with saying that he was poor. But Kaioshishi was stunned by these words. She had learned about it before coming to 3047 Academy. Although anyone who is a citizen of Planet 3047 can enroll for free, the school's part-time job quota actually belongs to those children with some power. To put it bluntly, it is to use various robots to replace people to do things and then lie down and collect money. She really didn't expect Wen Jiu to be very poor. Kaioshishi secretly looked at Wen Jiu, and seeing her pale face, thin body, and malnutrition, Kaioshishi felt very complicated. But she didn't say much, just picked up a handkerchief to join in washing the dishes. The two of them finished the follow-up work quietly and then slowly walked back to the dormitory. Jiu, what class do you have tomorrow morning?" Kaioshishi changed into a set of pink pajamas before lying on the bed. Wen Jiu had too many classes to choose from, and for a moment he forgot a little. So she opened the Ziji panel and took a look before saying, "Use and practice of superpowers and physical training. Oh, then we can't go to class together tomorrow." Kaioshishi turned over. "My class is fighting. I hope it won't be too tiring. Oh, by the way, Jiu, I added you as my Star Network friend. It's still early now. How about we go to the Star Network world to play for a while?" Wen Jiu had never been to the Star Network world, so she agreed to Kaioshishi's proposal. After accepting the other party's friend request, she learned to connect her mental power with the Ziji again. Detected that user 9 is entering the Star Network world. Start connecting. As the mechanical sound sounded in her mind, Wen Jiu soon fell into darkness, but then a white light gradually spread out in front of her eyes. Connection completed. User 9, please abide by the rules of the Star Network world. I wish you a happy life. Not long after, Wen Jiu found himself standing in a strange place. This should be the Star Network world that Kaioshishi mentioned. There was a small blue panel in front of her, which displayed various messages. Wen Jiu tried to slide it to turn off the panel, and began to observe the surrounding environment. She found that this place was more brilliant and dazzling than the city outside. In addition to the high-rise buildings that still felt familiar, the rest were new things she had never seen. Mechas of various forms soared in the air, and from time to time, hovercrafts passed through them. They scurried around like domed venomous snakes in the steel jungle. However, many mechas flashed by, so she didn't have time to see their appearance clearly. Holographic projections that were larger and more eye-catching than those outside appeared on the steel buildings. Just by looking up, you can see one advertisement after another. What surprised Wen Jiu even more was that everyone walking on the street was different from usual. Some were full of patterns, some had animal ears on their heads, and there were even half-orc-like beings. Wen Jiu was dazzled by all kinds of strange costumes, and it took a while before he remembered that he should look for Kaioshishi. So Wen Jiu sent a message to Kaioshishi. Family Wealth 9, Shishi, where are you? Kaioshishi, I'm at the entrance of Maobei Mall. If we both enter at the same time, our locations won't be too far apart. I'll wait for you here. After Wen Jiu remembered the name of the mall, she called out the panel and selected automatic navigation. When she looked forward, a series of green footprints appeared on the ground, guiding her in the direction. Wen Jiu followed the instructions and continued to observe the surroundings. She felt like Leo entering the Grandview Garden, and everything she saw was new and interesting. As Kaioshishi said, they were indeed very close. Wen Jiu only walked for more than 10 minutes before she saw Kaioshishi standing at the entrance of Maobei Mall. But unlike her previous appearance, Kaioshishi was wearing a pink princess dress and had golden curly hair. If her face hadn't changed, Wen Jiu almost didn't recognize her. But when Wen Jiu walked quickly to Kaioshishi's side, he scared Kaioshishi. What can I do for you, sir? Today's first update has been delivered. If you like it, please click to collect and recommend it. Thank you to the little cuties who clicked to collect and recommend it. Thank you so much. Your support is my motivation. The second update will be sent at 030 and the EVENING equals W equals. Chapter 13. This gentleman. This gentleman? Wen Jiu was confused. Which gentleman? She turned her head and looked around. Apart from her and Kaioshishi, she didn't see anyone else beside Kaioshishi. Shishi, who are you calling? When Wen Jiu said this, she immediately understood why Kaioshishi said that. Because her originally tender voice has become unusually rough, as if she is going to fight a tiger with her bare hands in the next second. Jiu? Kaioshishi's face was full of disbelief. How come you still have this hobby? I don't mean to offend you. Wen Jiu was silent. She never thought that after the character interface was stuck, the system would automatically set her to look like this. She walked to the smooth outer wall of the mall that could be used as a mirror, and in an instant she felt that she wanted to escape from this world even more. Wen Jiu's current appearance was clearly reflected on the wall. He was strong and sturdy, and it looked like he could beat 10 people with one punch. He had a fierce face, skin darker than charcoal, and a beard on his face. Wen Jiu was stunned for a moment, then he touched his beard subconsciously, thinking that it was no wonder that few people dared to look directly at her when she was walking just now. At this time, Kaioshishi finally prepared herself mentally, took a deep breath, and walked to Wen Jiu's side and said, I'll take you to the Starlight Night Market. Let's take the suspended electric rail car first. But she didn't have the courage to hold Wen Jiu's arm as usual. After all, Wen Jiu's arm was now as strong as her thighs. So Wen Jiu followed Kaioshishi all the way to the station, and during the period, a young man came to ask Kaioshishi if she needed help. He looked like a bad guy who was coercing Wen Jiu. So while waiting for the bus, Wen Jiu quickly opened the panel to search for how to change the Star Network image. However, it can be changed, but it costs 5,000 star coins to reset the image. Poor Wen Jiu decisively gave up the change and made do with it. The two sat in the suspended electric rail car and glided on the track above and arrived at the Starlight Night Market station after a while. Wen Jiu walked side by side with the petite Kaioshishi with his big body. Whenever someone passed by, they couldn't help but look back at them. But Wen Jiu still walked calmly, and Kaioshishi didn't say anything because of the strange looks from others. Instead, she held Wen Jiu's finger and continued to walk with her. And those who looked back suddenly understood that the two were father and daughter. Wen Jiu and Kaioshishi didn't know what others were thinking. They walked down the steps and turned into the gate of Xinguang Night Market. Unlike the prosperity in the city just now, this place is full of noise and bustle, and people come and go like a tide. There are enthusiastic stall owners and hawkers everywhere, and noisy hawking sounds come one after another. There are those who sell strange weapons, potions for treating various injuries, and freshly made food. The stalls of all sizes are arranged in an orderly manner, with a sense of fireworks. It gave Wen Jiu a feeling of returning to the world he used to be. Take a look at what you like. The things here will be automatically deposited into the Star Network account after purchase, and we can withdraw them when we return to reality. Kaioshishi took Wen Jiu to walk and look. Many vendors wanted to say a few words, but seeing Wen Jiu's burly appearance, they retreated one after another. Generally speaking, the image of the Star Network is based on one's appearance, so these people are a little scared when they see Wen Jiu's ferocious face. However, all this did not affect the two girls shopping. Kaioshishi even felt that it was great to have Wen Jiu here, and there was no need to worry about being sold things by strange people. In addition to these street vendors, there are also many shops selling items, and the things inside are much better than those on the street vendors. Hey, Jiu, look at this. Kaioshishi picked up a huge bow from a table outside a jewelry store. What do you think of me wearing this? As she said, Kaioshishi gestured with the bow on her head. It must be said that Kaioshishi is indeed very suitable for these things full of girlish hearts. Wen Jiu accompanied Kaioshishi to go into the store for another round of shopping. In the end, Kaioshishi returned with a lot of things. She even bought a few black and white folders for Wen Jiu. The two of them shopped for a while. During this time, Kaioshishi also bought 2 roasted sweet potatoes, but these were not only roasted black on the outside, but also like charcoal on the inside. In the past, she thought that they were barely edible, but after eating the food made by Wen Jiu, Kaioshishi looked at the roasted sweet potatoes with disgust. Wen Jiu was thinking, while shopping, whether he could also set up a street stall here. People here definitely don't know what she knows, and the money is just around the corner. So Wen Jiu opened the panel and searched for relevant information on it. What she couldn't understand was why it cost 5,000 star coins to change the image of the Star Network, but it only cost 2,500 star coins to set up a street stall here. But even if it was 2,500 star coins, Wen Jiu couldn't take it out now. She only had about 300 star coins on her body, and she had to thank 3047 Academy for depositing a meal fee into each student's Star Network account, but it couldn't be withdrawn or used elsewhere. So Wen Jiu could only suppress the idea of setting up a street stall, thinking about when he could save enough money to come back. Kaioshishi looked at the time. It was almost dawn. The time in the Star Network world flows at the same speed as in reality, so the two of them quickly left and went to sleep, fearing that they would miss the next day's class. The next morning, Wen Jiu stood on the balcony of the dormitory and began to practice. Although she couldn't use the exercises she had learned here, she could still practice some to strengthen her physical fitness. So Wen Jiu sank his energy into his danshin and performed a set of Teika in one go. Kaioshishi's class was a little later than hers, so when Wen Jiu left, Kaioshishi was still sleeping. Wen Jiu went to the classroom shown on the schedule alone. When she arrived at the classroom, there were already several classmates sitting inside, but she was not familiar with the other students, so Wen Jiu didn't go up to say hello, and found a seat closer to the podium and sat down. 5 minutes before class, the classroom was already full of people. Here, everyone has a single table, so there is no such thing as sitting at the same table. No one came to chat with Wen Jiu. so he simply lay on the table and opened the Star Network panel to continue studying how to become a billionaire. After a while, a plump female teacher walked in from the door. She wore glasses and walked up to the podium with a pleasant face and said, "Hello, students. I'm Teacher Lee, who teaches a course on the use and practice of superpowers." "Hello, Teacher Lee." Wen Jiu stood up with everyone else, greeted Lee Kinson, and sat down again. "Sit down. Today I will tell you about the relevant knowledge of superpowers. After everyone has enough knowledge, we will go to the training ground for actual combat exercises." Then Lee Kinson turned on the holographic projection and began to introduce the origin of superpowers to them. "Everyone, open the wisdom ring panel and select the record interface." Lee Kinson continued, after stepping down from the stage. "I believe that many of you here have some understanding of superpowers before entering school. Students who don't know can watch the video first. The second update of the day has been delivered. Thank you all for your recommendations and collections. If you like it, please click on the collection and recommendation votes. Like 030. PS. This article contains food element, and the chapters with food will be named after the food. Chapter 14 Class Training 1. Wen Jiu stared at the constantly changing images intently. This video introduced the origin and branches of superpowers in great detail. At present, the superpowers studied by the Federation can be divided into 8 major systems: gold, wood, water, fire, earth, light, darkness and ice. These superpowers can not only be used by people alone, but also assist in combat with mechas. However, due to the limited learning resources of the 3047 Academy, only after being promoted to the senior grade can one learn to use superpowers to cooperate with mechas in combat. Everyone has a basic understanding of superpowers, so let's continue to understand the characteristics of each superpower. The scene changed, and people with various superpowers appeared in the video and began to demonstrate. Some of them had flames on their fingertips in an instant, and some of them had a long vine appearing when they flicked their hands until a person with gold superpowers came on stage. That person snapped his fingers and several small metal pieces quickly rotated and flew in the air, creating a form similar to a gust of wind. Wen Jiu then realized that this was the skill that Shigang used to attack her yesterday. According to the current statistics of the Federation, the number of people with 3 types of superpowers, light, darkness, and ice, is the least. Lee Kinson taught the class diligently. Of course, people who can have 2 types of superpowers at the same time are also very rare. "Teacher, does anyone have 3 or 4 types of superpowers?" A male student sitting in the front asked attentively. Lee Kinson smiled. "In the history of the Federation, there have been 2 predecessors with 3 types of superpowers, but there has never been anyone with 4 types of superpowers." With the video playing and Teacher Lee's explanation, the first half of the class passed quickly. Wen Jiu also had a clearer understanding of superpowers. It was similar to the spiritual roots she had awakened in the past. She could use the elemental power contained in it to use skills to attack and defend, etc. In addition to the moves taught by the system, people with high talent can also create their own. After everyone rested for 10 minutes, Lee Kinson started teaching again. The video material has been played. Everyone can try to stimulate their own superpowers, Lee Kinson said, and began to demonstrate. She stretched out her hand. "Everyone, stretch out your hands first, then close your eyes, and feel the energy contained in your body." Wen Jiu followed her, and stretched out his hands, and closed his eyes. Before Lee Kinson finished speaking, Wen Jiu felt a familiar heat flow in his body. In just a moment, a touch of orange-red flame appeared on Wen Jiu's fingertips, and the sudden increase in temperature surprised Lee Kinson. There are many fire-type superpowers, but this is the first time she has met someone who can inspire such a passionate fire for the first time. But Lee Kinson quickly regained her composure, thinking that Wen Jiu was someone who had learned to use superpowers outside before. The other students were still trying to feel and mobilize their own energy, and Lee Kinson folded her hands and waited for them. She did not notice that the flame inspired by Wen Jiu suddenly appeared a touch of blue. Wen Jiu naturally kept staring at the flame on his fingertips. The blue was clearly the deep sea blue flame she had conquered before. The deep sea blue flame was her life fire that she had worked hard to find for a long time before, and the process of conquering it was naturally extremely difficult. Wen Jiu really didn't expect that this deep sea blue flame would follow her to this world, because when she came here, she couldn't use any skills, just like an ordinary person. But now that she has the fire of her life, she can make pills and sell them for money in the future. Wen Jiu's mood instantly improved a lot, and there was a layer of joy between her eyebrows. Not long after, the male classmate who asked the question earlier also successfully stimulated his superpowers, becoming the second person in the class to stimulate superpowers. His superpower is water-based, but his proficiency is too low, and his fingertips are like a stuck water gun that puffs water out. Although Wen Jiu had tested out dual system superpowers before, she concentrated again, but did not stimulate the wood-based superpowers. It was almost time for the get out of class to end, and there were less than 10 students who successfully stimulated their superpowers. Lee Kinson said softly, "Students who didn't succeed in stimulating their abilities this time, don't worry. Try more when you go back. Since everyone has successfully tested their abilities before entering school, then everyone will definitely be able to stimulate their abilities. Many people fail to stimulate their abilities the first time. Like Teacher Lee, I also tried many times before I succeeded." After class, Wen Jiu left the classroom and walked towards the training ground again. The next class was physical training. This time the teacher was a familiar one. But Wen Jiu didn't rush to greet Zhao Sen, but just stood in the queue. After seeing everyone gathered, Zhao Sen changed from a gentle young man to a falcon with a stern look. "Let's just do a simple training today," Zhao Sen said. Everyone turn right. Run. After that, he blew a whistle and urged the students to run forward and didn't let them stop until they ran 5 laps in the training ground. But everyone was still not used to it, and they couldn't help but gasp when they stopped. Wen Jiu also felt a little tired, but she was used to running around when picking up garbage, so a few laps on the training ground were not difficult for her. "Stand still," Zhao Sen suddenly scolded. "You are reserve soldiers. When you enter the academy, you must be aligned with the official federal soldiers." After he finished speaking, everyone who was originally panting resumed their correct standing postures, and the ranks became neat again. Zhao Sen nodded with satisfaction. "Next, the formal training will begin." He looked at a wire obstacle not far ahead and continued. "Start from this side, crawl forward through the wire mesh, then grab the bar in the air, and finally crawl back from the wire mesh over there." Listening to his words, everyone began to look at each other in bewilderment. Wen Jiu didn't think it was strange. She felt that, if she wanted to become a formal soldier, this amount of training was nothing. Next, the training officially begins. Everyone repeat 3 times, and come back to assemble. After speaking, Zhao Sen blew a whistle. Everyone rushed to the first wire mesh. Wen Jiu kept a steady pace. When she ran to the wire mesh, half of the people had already set off, while the remaining half stood there in a daze. She didn't stop for long, and crawled into the mud pit under the wire mesh without hesitation. Seeing the mud and water splashed by Wen Jiu, the 2 boys running behind her frowned. "Such dirty mud and water, do we really have to train here? It should be, right? Should we continue?" There were many people who were disgusted with them. Zhao Sen saw them staying in place, and came over and said, "Why are you standing there? Will there be an environment for you to choose when you go to the battlefield? If you don't continue training, you will double the number of times." After hearing this, the people who were standing there in a daze gritted their teeth and crawled on the ground one after another towards the mud pit. Wen Jiu was like a flexible loach, not afraid of getting dirty, and moved forward with her hands. Soon she finished crawling through the mud pit under the wire mesh and completed the task. Although her body was covered with mud, she still ran towards the next destination without blinking. Today's first update has been delivered. Thank you for your recommendation votes and monthly votes. CAC. New little cuties, please click to collect and recommend. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 15 Class Training 2. The second task was to grab the pole in the air. It sounds simple, but in fact, most of the students who had completed the first task stayed here. Because there was an unfathomable pool under the grab pole, and there were countless first-level alien beasts, sharp-toothed fish, swimming in it. Most of the students stood there thinking about it, and only a few tried to take action. A student with wood-related abilities tried hard, and summoned a bunch of vines that began to spread in the air. But just when the vines were about to touch the grab pole, the sharp-toothed fish suddenly flew up, and bit it to pieces in an instant. Others shook their heads at his operation. They had also tried various abilities, but to no avail. Wen Jiu also saw the behavior of that classmate, and she silently thought about how to solve it. But thinking alone is useless, and more attempts are still needed. So Wen Jiu walked forward, and tried to grab the first pull ring. However, the sharp-toothed fish did not move at all. Wen Jiu wanted to try to move forward, but suddenly heard a sneer. Of course there will be no reaction, if you touch it now. Once you are in the air, they will start to attack you. She looked in the direction of the voice, and saw a handsome boy holding his head high, with a rather arrogant attitude. Really? Thank you for your reminder. Wen Jiu was not angry, but looked at him with a smile. Although this person's attitude was not very good, he did not have any malicious intentions. Hearing her answer, the boy inexplicably felt a little uncomfortable, and turned his head away from Wen Jiu. Seeing that this person stopped talking, Wen Jiu began to try to move in the air. The others watched her slowly climb up from below. After Wen Jiu climbed about 2 meters, the sharp-toothed fish suddenly began to attack her. The sharp-toothed fish bared their teeth, and jumped up suddenly, wishing to drag her into the pool and tear her to pieces. Wen Jiu was caught off guard by a sharp-toothed fish. Although it was only bitten on her right calf, blood still seeped out through the cut seam of her school uniform. The students watching her from below were a little worried and shouted quickly, "You jump down first. Be careful. Come down first, and we'll think of another way." Even the sneering boy felt a little reluctant, and lowered his head to look. But Wen Jiu ignored him, and gritted her teeth to endure the stinging pain. While the sharp-toothed fish fell into the pool, she raised her head, and looked at the finish line in front of her. There was still more than half the distance to go. She looked at the sharp-toothed fish swimming below, and thought quickly about how to successfully pass. So many classmates had tried it before, and the supernatural power could not be used, so they could only use ordinary methods. The more sharp-toothed fish there were, the more they would be. If they were not careful, they would get hurt. Soon, Wen Jiu made a decision. She continued to move forward. Even if she was bitten again, and failed to dodge, she still gritted her teeth and moved forward. Seeing this, the students who originally wanted to wait for others to find a way below were all aroused. One by one, they began to try. When Wen Jiu successfully flipped over a pool and landed on the ground, she was already covered in scars. But she had been dodging very seriously, so these minor injuries did not affect her training. She just ran to the next pool. After she successfully passed the 3 pools and completed the task of grabbing the pole in the air, a strange picture suddenly flashed in her mind. But it disappeared too quickly, so she didn't react at all. She thought that maybe she was too tired and had hallucinations, so she didn't care much. Because many people were still doing the aerial rings at this time, Wen Jiu was the first to reach the last task. In fact, this task was very similar to the first task, both of which were crawling forward. It was just that the mud pit became a sand pit. Wen Jiu did not hesitate to get under the wire mesh and slowly moved forward in the sand pit. After this time, she had to repeat it twice to complete it, so she didn't want to waste too much energy at this time. After she completed the last task, Wen Jiu ran back to the original task location. After doing this 3 times, she had completely become a mudman fished out of the mud pit. There were still various sand particles on her body, and the blood stains on her school uniform could not be seen. Wen Jiu sat at the gathering point waiting for the others to return. She raised her hand, and looked at it out of boredom. Inexplicably, she thought of the time when she was naughty and her master was angry and scolded her as a mud monkey coming down from the mountain. Now she has really become a mud monkey. Here, Zhao Sen handed a nutrient solution to Wen Jiu. After Wen Jiu thanked him, he took it and poured it into his mouth. The fatigue in his body was relieved instantly. You have completed the training and you can go. Zhao Sen looked at the little Wen Jiu. He didn't expect that this student would be the first to complete the task in this training. He looked at Wen Jiu's thin and small appearance and thought that the other party would be ranked last. He even thought about how he would save Wen Jiu if he failed to complete the task. Unexpectedly, you can't judge a person by his appearance. Wen Jiu didn't act pretentiously when she heard this. After responding, she ran quickly towards the dormitory. She was covered in mud and had been very uncomfortable for a long time. She had to go back and wash it clean. Kyoshi was cleaning up in the dormitory. Suddenly she looked up and saw a mudman crawling in. But she was shocked. Go take a shower, Jiu. After recognizing the person, Kyoshi breathed a sigh of relief. She was so scared, she thought a wild man appeared out of nowhere. Fortunately, it was just Wen Jiu, not a wild man. Hearing this, Wen Jiu nodded. After taking the clothes to change, she went into the shower room and washed herself clean before coming out. As soon as she walked out, she heard Kyoshi's slightly surprised voice. Hey, why is your hair shorter? Kyoshi looked at Wen Jiu with some confusion, only to see that his waist-length platinum hair had only reached the collarbone. The second update has been delivered. Woohoo, please vote for the new cuties. I wish every cutie a happy weekend. 030. Tomorrow there will be 2 chapters of food. Chapter 16 Shepherd's Purse Dumplings 1. It's a bit troublesome to take care of, so I just cut it off. Wen Jiu took a towel and wiped it randomly. When she saw that her hair was no longer dripping with water, she found ointment from the medical kit provided by the college and applied it to the scratched places one by one. The main reason was that a lot of mud condensed on her hair when she took a shower just now. Wen Jiu thought that there would be many more such trainings in the future, and she had to rush to work in the cafeteria. If she took too much time to take care of herself every day, she was afraid that she would not have enough time. She simply cut her hair into short hair. I'll go to the cafeteria first. Wen Jiu changed her clothes and tied her hair into a small bun neatly. I'll go with you. Kyoshi only had one class in the morning, and she happened to have nothing to do at this time. So the two went to the cafeteria together. Wen Jiu went to check the remaining ingredients first, and suddenly found a large basket on the shelf. She took down the large basket, which contained half a basket of fresh meat and half a basket of vegetables. Kyoshi came over curiously, pointed at the vegetables in the basket and asked, "Hey, what kind of vegetables are these?" Wen Jiu took out some and looked at them carefully. This is shepherd's purse. In the past, in spring, she often went to the mountains to pick all kinds of wild vegetables under the pretext of picking herbs to cook. Shepherd's purse is easy to identify. The root leaves are clustered, deeply pinnate, rarely entire, and the upper lobes are triangular. The stem leaves are oblong or linear and ceolate, almost linear at the top, and ear-shaped at the base, with notches or serrations on the edges, or nearly entire. 1. Wen Jiu looked at the large piece of fresh meat again. The meat looked red and white, and it was very similar to the meat slices she had picked up before. They should all be the meat of the Gillubeast. When she ate it, she felt that the meat of the Gillubeast was very similar to the pork she had eaten before. So Wen Jiu had an idea in her mind. Chyankan potatoes can continue to be made, but Yangchan noodles can be replaced with shepherd's purse dumplings. Wen Jiu and Kyoshi first washed all the vegetables they were going to use, and then Kyoshi peeled the potatoes next to them, while Wen Jiu cleaned the Gillubeast meat and chopped it on the chopping board. After that, Wen Jiu mixed the flour and water in a certain proportion and began to knead the dough vigorously until the dough became medium hard before putting it into a bowl to let it stand. Then she quickly picked the yellow leaves of shepherd's purse and blanched it in boiling water for a while to remove the bitterness. Wen Jiu then chopped the blanched and cooled shepherd's purse into pieces and poured it into the bowl to mix with the meat filling, adding only a little salt, pepper, sesame oil and oyster sauce for seasoning. Then when Jiu brought over the potatoes that Kaioshishi had peeled and cut them into small pieces one by one for later use. After doing these things, the dough was also fermented. When Jiu's 5 fingers flew, and the dumplings he made were all as cute and small as ingots. Seeing this, Kaioshishi couldn't help but ask, Jiu, what are you making? Shepherd's purse dumplings. When Jiu saw that Kaioshishi looked eager to try, you can come and make dumplings together if you want. Hearing this, Kaioshishi happily picked up a dumpling skin and started making dumplings like Wen Jiu. But she made several dumplings in a row, and they were all ridiculously ugly. They didn't even come close to the shape of Wen Jiu's dumplings. Kaioshishi had seen her own skills, so she decisively gave up making dumplings and moved a stool to sit next to her waiting to taste them. Wen Jiu was always serious and focused when doing things. As the saying goes, the more serious a person is, the better looking he is. At this moment, she was as dazzling as a pearl. Kaioshishi secretly thought that it was a pity that only she could see Wen Jiu's style in the kitchen. It would be great if more people could see Wen Jiu, so that more and more people would come to eat. Wen Jiu quickly finished making all the dumplings, and she first put enough for 2 people into the pot to simmer. Then she started to make chili oil. Finally, when the dumplings were cooked until they were bright white and floating, Wen Jiu took them out and put them on the plate. Kaioshishi picked up a dumpling carefully and just bit into it. The hot soup inside the dumpling splashed out, full of sweetness. The chewy dough, combined with the fragrant shepherd's purse, made her unable to help but exclaim that it was addictive. There was also a hint of saltiness from the meat filling, which made the taste of the whole dumpling more layered. Kaioshishi ate the shepherd's purse dumplings one after another, thanking Wen Jiu for being her roommate. She really couldn't find another person who could make such delicious food. She often went to those high-end restaurants with her parents, but to be honest, all the meals in those high-end restaurants were not as good as Wen Jiu's bowl of dumplings. It's so great to be able to eat such delicious food. Kaioshishi now looks at Wen Jiu with admiration. Jiu, you are so amazing. I think I can help you here without salary, as long as there is delicious food every day. Wen Jiu agreed with a smile, but she thought in her heart that she would still have to pay Kaioshishi when she had money. The two quickly finished the dumplings. Kaioshishi took the bowl and chopsticks and ran to wash the dishes. Wen Jiu entered today's menu into the electronic screen outside. When it was time for the canteen to serve food, many people were walking slowly towards the canteen. But a group of people came out from nowhere and shouted while running, "Brother darling, run faster. What if you go too late and there is no food? I just got off the training ground. Why are you shouting? Run quickly. Hurry up, brother darling. If there is no food, you won't be able to eat it today." Many people were aroused by their loud shouting, and a small number of people followed them and ran towards the canteen. More and more people followed, and a large group of students ran quickly towards the canteen. The leaders rushed directly to window number 18. "Fairy. Plain noodles. Plain noodles. I want 3 bowls of Cheyenne potatoes. Add more spiciness." Kaioshishi smiled and said, "Sorry, there is no plain noodles today. We have a new dish, shepherd's purse dumplings. Do you want to try it?" The people in front were a little hesitant. They had never heard of shepherd's purse dumplings. Instead, Wan Daling, who came from behind, shouted loudly, "I want 2 servings of that dumplings." Seeing him order, the people who were still hesitating quickly followed suit and ordered shepherd's purse dumplings. Although they didn't know what this was, at least it wouldn't be worse than the food at other windows, right? They were all people who had eaten the food made by Wen Jiu yesterday. Because Wen Jiu was only open at noon, and in the evening, they could only eat the food made by others in the morning, but they felt like they were eating garbage, and it was hard to swallow. So as soon as lunch was served at noon, they rushed to the cafeteria to order. Wen Jiu put the dumplings into hot water, and then poured the potato strips into the basin, and mixed the ingredients in an orderly manner. Soon, all the orders were completed. Wan Daling and his friends sat down with their plates in anticipation, looking at the steaming dumplings that were as round and cute as ingots. Suddenly, they felt hungry. "Is this the delicious potato you talked about yesterday?" The person sitting next to Wen Jiu was his good brother Liu Pao. After Wen Jiu ate such delicious food yesterday, he went back to sell it to everyone. Today, he did not forget to bring his good brother to eat. But Liu Pao has never been interested in eating, because in his opinion, any food is unpalatable, and it is better to drink nutrient solution. But since Wen Jiu opened his mouth, he couldn't refuse, so he followed him here. He originally wanted to eat a few bites to deal with it, but now seeing the distinct colors of the yellow potato strips and the bright red chili oil, he actually had some appetite. This is it, called Cheyenne potato. Wen Jiu handed him a pair of chopsticks. Try it quickly. Wen Jiu ordered Cheyenne potato today, which was specially spicy, so the potato strips that Liu Pao picked up were covered with red oil. He took a bite carelessly and was immediately hooked. Today's update has been delivered. If you like it, please give me more recommendations. Remember to collect it. Like 030. Thank you again to the little cuties who sent recommendations. Woohoo. There is also a little angel who sent a monthly ticket. Thank you so much. I can only work hard to write to repay you CAC. PS. 1. Quoted from Baidu Encyclopedia Shepherd's Purse. And please ignore the author's useless name CAC. Chapter 17 Shepherd's Purse Dumplings 2. The spiciness burned all the way down his throat to his heart, and he was so stimulated that he stuck out his tongue. Liu Pao took a few gulps of water before he recovered. Damn, I forgot to put less spiciness in your portion. Wen Jiu watched Liu Pao drinking water like crazy, and then remembered that Liu Pao didn't seem to be able to eat spicy food. But Liu Pao just waved his hand and said, "It's okay, I want this taste. The taste of this pepper is amazing." It's not that he doesn't eat spicy food, but he has never found spicy food that can be called delicious. But the spiciness of this Cheyenne potato made him feel numb all over, but it was very unforgettable. So Liu Pao only paused for a moment and then started eating again. Wen Jiu was relieved to see that he was fine and picked up a dumpling to take a look. The crystal clear, plump, bright white dumpling was steaming. Wen Jiu blew on the dumpling and put it in his mouth. The moment he chewed it, he was overwhelmed by the special taste and couldn't help but widen his eyes. The first thing he tasted was the sweetness of vegetables, followed by the freshness of meat, a perfect blend of salty and sweet. He only felt that the dumplings were delicious. The skin of the dumplings was chewy and smooth, and the fillings were full of layers. He swallowed the dumplings in his mouth immediately, leaving only a mouthful of fresh fragrance, and quickly picked up a few more and stuffed them into his mouth. Because he ate too quickly, he burned Wen Jiu's lips. But he was only immersed in the deliciousness and had no time to care about other things. Is this delicious too? Liu Pao had finished a portion of Cheyenne potatoes, and he was craving for the shepherd's purse dumplings on Wen Jiu's plate. Wen Jiu was not a stingy person. He wanted to share a few dumplings with Liu Pao, but when he thought of the fresh and sweet taste, he could only swallow the dumplings with tears. Go and queue up to buy another one. Wen Jiu patted his good brother's shoulder while eating. Bring one for me too. Liu Pao was speechless. The brotherhood of many years was not as good as a dumpling. But he didn't say anything, just turned his head and looked at the window number 18. The scene there made him dumbfounded. The queue stretched from the window to the main entrance of the cafeteria. It was the first time he had seen such a lively scene. In the past, when people came to the cafeteria to eat, they would not bother to wait in the long queue and would just go to another window. Anyway, everyone's food was equally bad. But there was just one window, number 18, which made the students happily queue up. The same was true for Liu Pao. As long as people had tasted the food made by Wen Jiu, they would not be unwilling to queue up to buy it. Next, Kyoshi wiped her sweat with a handkerchief. There were more people ordering today than last night, and she was so busy that she was a little dazzled when checking the orders. But Wen Jiu was different from her. He still made dumplings and potatoes in an orderly manner without any panic. 2 servings of Cheyenne potatoes and 2 servings of shepherd's purse dumplings. Wen Jiu put the prepared food into a bowl and handed it to Kyoshi, who quickly took it and put it at the window. The food is ready, please be careful of the heat. Rumen and Lee Kinson took it with a smile and found a seat. The two have been friends for many years. Today, Yuruman specially brought Lee Kinson to Wen Jiu's place for dinner. Lee Kinson thought Yuruman wanted to take care of her students until she tasted the shepherd's purse dumplings. She knew why Yuruman specially asked her to come here. This tastes good, right? Seeing Lee Kinson's expression was the same as hers yesterday, Yuruman knew that she must be impressed by the food made by Wen Jiu. Not only good, it's so delicious. Lee Kinson has always loved food, but there are many things to do in the college, so usually she can only trouble Yuruman to help her bring back some food from high-end restaurants when she goes out. She has a gentle and introverted personality, and even when she ate the signature dishes of a high-end restaurant before, she didn't lose her composure like this. As if she was not afraid of the heat, she stuffed the shepherd's purse dumplings into her mouth one by one. When there were only a few left, Lee Kinson suddenly had an idea to dip the shepherd's purse dumplings in the bowl of Cheyenne potatoes and dip them in chili oil. A spicy taste instantly spread across her tongue. So spicy, Lee Kinson took a breath and felt tears welling up in her eyes. The spicy taste was accompanied by the sweetness of the filling. Although the taste was obvious, it did not conflict with each other. Instead, it made Lee Kinson feel refreshed all over. The sauce tasted fresh and spicy, but it did not make her stomach uncomfortable. In the past, she always disliked eating spicy food because she would feel choking and uncomfortable every time she finished eating it. Hiss, delicious. After the spiciness wore off, Lee Kinson continued to eat the shepherd's purse dumplings with the sauce. Seeing that Lee Kinson was eating so comfortably, Yuruman was not to be outdone and dipped one into her mouth. Her mouth was a little red from the spiciness, but the spicy stimulation brought by the chili made her feel very satisfied. Both of them had small appetites, but they were both tempted by the food. They stopped eating until their stomachs were slightly bulging. I'll go ask Wen Jiu for a takeaway box. Yuruman rarely ate so full, and seeing that there were still a few shepherd's purse dumplings left on the plate, she felt that they should not be wasted. Lee Kinson nodded at first, and then suddenly remembered that the name Wen Jiu sounded very familiar. When Yuruman came back with the takeaway box, Lee Kinson asked, "Is Wen Jiu a student working at window number 18? Yuruman picked up the shepherd's purse dumplings and put them in the box while answering, "Yes, but she is the only one running this window." Hearing this, Lee Kinson felt even more shocked. "So you mean she made all these meals?" "Yes." Yuruman sealed the box and prepared to follow Lee Kinson out of the cafeteria. "What's wrong? I see you're so surprised. There was a student named Wen Jiu in my class this morning," Lee Kinson recalled. "She was the first one in the class to activate her superpowers, so I have some impression of her." Yuruman smiled and said, "That's her. This is a good seedling I picked up." Lee Kinson didn't comment. Wen Jiu's enrollment information stated that she was a dual system superpower. Now she is so good at cooking. I don't know how many surprises she can create in the future. Wen Jiu and Kyoshi still underestimated the enthusiasm of students and teachers for food. Everyone who came to taste it yesterday went back and sold it crazily to their friends. The number of customers who came to buy today has doubled. There are still 30 servings of Cheyenne potatoes and 17 servings of shepherd's purse dumplings left. Students behind, pay attention. Kyoshi felt that she was more tired than attending class after being busy this afternoon. But when she saw the enthusiastic and expectant look of her classmates, she felt that she could still hold on. Wen Jiu hadn't been so busy for a long time, but she still looked calm and composed, with only her slightly trembling hands revealing that she was very tired. Fortunately, it didn't take long for them to finish today's lunch business. The two insisted on washing the dishes and then dragged their tired bodies back to the dormitory. "I think we need a dishwasher. Today's second update has been delivered, please sign for it, cuties." First of all, thank you to the cuties who voted for recommendations and give you a big heart. 030. At the same time, I hope that the new cuties can collect and recommend some of them. I really want your votes, CAC. The support of every cutie is my motivation to write. I will write well and work hard to update. I'm really happy that there has been a wave of collections in the past few days. QWQ. Chapter 18. Simulation of Mecha Driving 1. Kyoshi was lying on the bed. Her voice was weak because of exhaustion. I think so too. Wen Jiu agreed with this. She didn't expect that the students and teachers were so enthusiastic. She originally planned to do it step by step and then hire someone to wash the dishes when she was too busy. Unexpectedly, on the second day of opening, she felt that she was going to fail. In the past, she only cooked for herself, but now she has to cook for hundreds of people and wash the dishes herself. It's really too much for a while. Thinking of this, Wen Jiu opened the wisdom ring and sent a message to Zhao Senator. Family Wealth 9. Teacher Zhao, if I want to apply for someone to help at the window, which teacher should I find? It was lunchtime, and Zhao Sen replied to her quickly. 3047 Zhao Sen, find teacher Li. The next second, Zhao Sen pushed Li Kinson's contact information to Wen Jiu. Li Kinson was about to take a nap when she suddenly saw the wisdom ring flashing. She clicked it and found that someone had sent a friend request. It was this name that made her a little confused. 3047 Li Kinson, hello, what can I do for you? Wen Jiu quickly typed on the panel. Jia K119, hello, teacher Li, I'm Wen Jiu, the student in charge of window number 18 in the cafeteria. Li Kinson finally understood that this strange account was actually Wen Jiu, and she couldn't understand why she chose such a nickname. 3047 Li Kinson, hello, Wen Jiu, what can I do for you? Wen Jiu pondered for a while and briefly described his thoughts to the other party. 3047 Li Kinson, okay, I will help you apply. I will notify you when there is news. Good afternoon. Li Kinson had a good impression of Wen Jiu. On the one hand, Wen Jiu performed very well in class, and on the other hand, the food he made her look at him with new eyes. She naturally hoped that the window number 18 that Wen Jiu was in charge of could recruit more people to help, so that Wen Jiu would have more spare energy to make more delicious food. After solving the problem of recruiting people, Wen Jiu lay on the bed and took a nap. It was not until Ziji's class reminder sounded that she hurriedly got up and ran out. Kyoshi had no classes in the afternoon. After seeing Wen Jiu leave, she turned over and continued to rest. Wen Jiu ran all the way to the classroom. Fortunately, there were still a few minutes before the class bell rang, so she quickly found an empty seat and sat down. This class was mecha driving, and she was full of expectations for it. After a while, a sturdy male teacher with a stern face walked in. My last name is Zhang, just call me Teacher Zhang. Zhang Helen glanced around the classroom. Are you all here? He had a cold face and a long scar under his eyes. Just standing on the podium was enough to make these students feel in awe. Everyone was silent and dared not speak, and everyone sat obediently. Watch a teaching video first when you are here. It was similar to Li Kinson's teaching method in the morning, using holographic projection to let freshmen understand theoretical knowledge first. Wen Jiu also sat obediently, watching the image intently. However, the freshmen could not directly touch the real mecha, and could only learn from the simulated mecha driving first, so this video mainly explained the method of driving in the simulated mecha cabin. When the video was finished, Zhang Heling said expressionlessly, 5 minutes of rest time. After the end, stand in line in the corridor. After he finished speaking, few people dared to take a break. Everyone hurried to the corridor and stood in line, and Wen Jiu also stood in the queue with everyone. After Zhang Heling counted the number of people in his mind, he led them to the simulated mecha cockpit. This is the simulated mecha cockpit. I told you not to move before you start practicing. Zhang Heling raised his chin. Now each of you find a simulated cockpit and sit down. Wen Jiu looked around, and the oval, egg-shaped cockpits were lined up in an orderly manner in the huge classroom. She walked to an empty mecha cabin, and just as she was thinking about how to open the hatch, the red dots on the silver hatch suddenly flashed. Scan successful. Open the hatch. After the voice disappeared, the silver hatch slowly rose up, revealing a cockpit that could accommodate one person. Wen Jiu carefully stepped into the leather driving seat inside, recalling the contents of the previous video explanation, while fastening several seat belts. After she sat down steadily, the hatch slowly fell and closed. Wen Jiu was not a child who loved to make trouble. She did not mess around with the operating table, but only carefully identified the various buttons on it. Although the operating table of the simulated cockpit had labels on what each button was used for, the video explanation said that driving was mainly a test of everyone's mental strength. Because real mecha driving mainly relies on people's mental strength. Classmates, next we will officially start learning mecha driving. Zhang Heling's voice sounded in each cockpit, and everyone listened to his instructions obediently. First, press the green button on the left armrest of the driving seat and put on the headset. Wen Jiu followed Zhang Heling's instructions, and after pressing the button, she saw that the baffle at the front end of the left armrest of the driving seat moved out, and a small headset was installed inside. It looked a bit like a modern wireless Bluetooth headset. She picked up the headset and put it on. The seemingly ordinary headset stuck to her ears like plasticine the moment she put it in her ears. No matter how she shook her head, it would not fall out. At this time, Wen Jiu heard Zhang Heling say again, "This headset is made of special materials. No matter what happens, it will not fall off accidentally. When driving an ordinary mecha, everyone needs to wear this to obey the commander's orders. To take it out, just press the small dot at the end of the headset, and it will fall off automatically. Next, please press the blue button on the console, and enter your student number on the light curtain panel." Wen Jiu listened to the instructions, and operated step by step. When she finished entering her student number, the buttons on the console began to flash with a strange light, and the lights in the cabin were completely turned off. A huge transparent display screen appeared in front of her eyes, with various information and values constantly jumping on it. "Okay, hold the control handle with your right hand and start training." As soon as Wen Jiu held the control handle, she felt a strange force pulling her thoughts. "Noah is at your service. The simulated driving training is about to begin soon." Wen Jiu felt that her mental power seemed to be integrated with the mecha system. The originally dark outer window lit up at this time. She did not see the familiar classroom scene, but an empty sandy land. "The simulated driving training has begun. Please concentrate your mental power. Student number 1318. The simulated battle is about to begin." Wen Jiu tensed her body and tried to move 2 steps first. The scene in front of her really changed with her operation. Before she was familiar with the operation, she saw a huge interstellar beast appear in front of her. The first level interstellar beast Fenan. The skill is fireball attack, and the weakness is at the tail. "I'm a little stuck. This is my first time describing mecha driving CAC. Thank you all for your recommendation votes and collections. If you like it, please click to collect and recommend. Love you. 030. Chapter 19. Mecha Driving Simulator 2. Wen Jiu looked at the huge interstellar beast. There were many cracks on its carbon black body, and inside it was a red liquid surging like boiling magma. Its 4 sharp claws were crawling on the ground, and its slender tail was raised high. It looked quite like the lizard she knew, but this lizard was magnified countless times. "Please prepare for battle, student 1318. The cold and quiet voice of the system sounded, and Wen Jiu controlled the mecha to move a few steps towards Fenyan. As soon as she selected a pistol, she saw Fenyan spit out a hot flame at her. Wen Jiu rolled over and dodged the flame. Even though she knew that she was in a simulated driving, the feeling of being involved with the mecha was very realistic. Even the attack of the interstellar beast was extremely real. When the flame approached Wen Jiu, she could even feel the suffocating heat. Wen Jiu quickly fired 2 shots at Fenyan. Although she was not familiar with the use of the gun, fortunately the simulated mecha system came with a naming setting, and she hit all of them with a few shots. However, Fenyan's shell is hard, and except for its soft tail, which is a weak point, other parts are invulnerable to swords and guns. Seeing Fenyan attack again, a huge fireball spewed out from its fang-filled mouth. Wen Jiu retreated a distance to barely avoid it, and then changed to a compound bow. She had never learned to use a gun before, but she had practiced a lot of bow and arrow shooting. It was just that she went up the mountain to hunt pheasants and rabbits at that time. She did not find a traditional bow in the weapon interface, and looking at the shape of the compound bow, she felt that it should be similar to use. So she confidently shot an arrow, but the aiming range of this bow and arrow could not be controlled by the system. So Wen Jiu's first arrow was not surprisingly shot off. But she did not get discouraged and quickly distanced herself from Fen Yan again and shot an arrow at its tail again. Wen Jiu has always been smart and agile, especially in learning. After a few arrows, she quickly mastered the trick. After dodging the fireball attack again, Wen Jiu took advantage of the moment when Fen Yan was accumulating power to spit fire and steadily shot a crossbow arrow at its raised tail. This time, the crossbow arrow accurately hit Fen Yan's tail. Fen Yan, who was still accumulating power to attack, fell to the ground instantly, and Wen Jiu was relieved. Congratulations to student number 1318 for completing the simulated battle. As the system prompt sounded, the scene in front of him gradually disappeared and turned into darkness again. The simulated mecha driving has ended, and the hatch is about to open. Goodbye. After the system sound fell, the lights in the cabin lit up instantly, and the buttons that were originally flashing dimmed at this time, and the closed hatch slowly opened. Well done. Wen Jiu just left the cockpit and saw Zhang Heling standing outside and watching her. That's true. Wen Jiu was very confident in her ability. After all, she was an excellent seedling who had practiced Taoism and had experienced many hardships. Hearing her answer like this, Zhang Heling was stunned. It was the first time he heard such words. But it's normal. It's normal for a child to be a little intimidated when he just entered the academy. Go over there and rest. Zhang Heling pointed to the seat behind him. Wen Jiu sat down and closed her eyes to conserve her energy. Driving a mecha really consumes a lot of mental energy. Even if it was just a simulated driving, she felt a little tired. At this time, she was the only one who had completed the training first. The other students were still fighting the simulated interstellar beasts in the cockpit. After 10 minutes, Zhang Heling led another male student over. Wen Jiu looked up and felt that this person looked familiar. Why is it you? Before Wen Jiu could recall carefully, the person in front of him spoke first. Zikingai has always been confident in his abilities. He has been exposed to mecha driving and the use of superpowers since before entering school through his family's relationship. But today, he lost to Wen Jiu in the morning physical training and became the second person to complete the training. This matter had already bothered him, and now the mecha driving met Wen Jiu again, and he actually finished later than the other party. Wen Jiu looked up at him, and then he remembered that it was the arrogant kid he had just met that morning. But this guy had a sullen face now, and they were not very familiar with each other, so Wen Jiu did not treat him warmly. HMPH. Zikingai snorted coldly and sat in the position farthest from Wen Jiu with her arms folded. He did not want to see this little girl who made him lose face. She must have studied secretly. Otherwise, how could she beat herself? Zikingai thought secretly in her heart and secretly glanced at Wen Jiu, who continued to close his eyes to rest. When the get out of class was about to end, others walked out of the simulated cockpit one after another. Unlike Wen Jiu and Zikingai, who did not look tired at all, each of them had the word exhausted written on their faces. If they had not taken into account that Zhang Heling was still staring at them, they would have fallen asleep on their chairs in the next second. The most challenging part of mecha driving is mental strength. Several students failed the training due to insufficient mental strength. Zhang Heling put his hands behind his back and looked stern. The academy has a place to strengthen mental strength training. You can go there to practice. Today's training ends here. Everyone go back and have a good rest. After that, everyone left the classroom. Wen Jiu also walked slowly towards the cafeteria because her mental strength had not yet fully recovered. As soon as she walked out of the teaching building, she heard the sound of running behind her. Hey, are you going to train your mental strength? Zikingai's brother graduated from the 3047 Academy. Before he came to school, he told him a lot about the academy. So Zikingai had already figured out the situation in the academy. He saw that Wen Jiu seemed to be walking towards the direction of the mental strength training room, and he immediately became alert. I didn't expect such a little girl to be so hardworking. As a result, Wen Jiu replied coldly the next second, I'm going to the cafeteria to work. Every time Wen Jiu fell into fatigue, she would talk less. She was already mentally exhausted at this time, and she had to deal with this arrogant kid who came out of nowhere, which made her feel very unhappy. So she quickened her pace, and didn't want to get entangled with Zikingayu. However, Zikingayu didn't believe what she said, and kept following Wen Jiu, wanting to find out. Wen Jiu ignored Zikingayu who was following her, and just wanted to go to the cafeteria to finish her work, and go back to the dormitory to rest. Her mental strength is still too weak now. She is so tired, just by operating the simulated mecha for a while. It doesn't meet her high requirements for herself at all. It seems that she really needs to take time to train her mental strength. Thinking of this, Wen Jiu slowly walked to the cafeteria door and went straight to window number 18. Zikingayu, who was following behind, began to wonder, is she really here to work? As a result, Wen Jiu really came to work. This made Zikingayu stay where she was. He stared blankly at Wen Jiu entering the kitchen. After she greeted another sweet-looking little girl, she skillfully tied an apron and put on a mask, looking like an experienced person. Today's update has been delivered. Please check it out, my dears. Thank you for your collection and recommendation votes. Bobo, my dears. 030 I will update for a few days starting from tomorrow. I also ask all the little cuties to click on the collection and recommendation votes. This is really important to me. Your support is my motivation to write. Please. CAC children really need collection and recommendation votes. PS. Zikingayu is not the male protagonist. He is just one of the female protagonist's friends. Chapter 20 Tuna shoots scrambled eggs 1. Are you really here to work? Zikingayu leaned against the window and looked at Wen Jiu inside. What else? Am I here to practice? Although Wen Jiu smiled gently, his words were full of sarcasm. Oh. Zikingayu felt that he shouldn't have looked up to Wen Jiu and wasted his time. But he felt that he would be at a disadvantage if he just left like that, so he simply sat in the cafeteria to see what kind of things could be sold at the window where Wen Jiu was. Wen Jiu started preparing the ingredients for today. While peeling potatoes, Kyoshi glanced at the young boy sitting in the chair with a face full of complaints and whispered to Wen Jiu, "Who is that? I don't know him either." Wen Jiu was picking the yellow leaves on the shepherd's purse. Since Wen Jiu said he didn't know him, Kyoshi didn't ask any more questions and turned around to concentrate on his work. Wen Jiu had just finished removing the remaining yellow leaves of the shepherd's purse when he suddenly found another bundle of vegetables on the shelf. She remembered that the student who had been receiving her said that the teacher distributed the ingredients to each window every week. Today was Monday, and not only were there extra shepherd's purse and Gilubis meat at noon, but there were also extra ingredients at night. So Wen Jiu sent a message to Lee Kinson with doubts, but Lee Kinson was still in class and did not reply. Wen Jiu could only suppress her emotions and picked up the bundle of vegetables to take a look. A faint fragrance wafted from the reddish-brown branches and leaves, allowing her to quickly identify that it was another wild vegetable, Chinese tune buds. Unlike the sweet taste of shepherd's purse, Chinese tune buds have a unique and special aroma. Chinese tune buds are rich in nutrients and have therapeutic effects. They are mainly used to treat diseases such as exogenous colds, rheumatism, and stomach ache. 1. Unfortunately, there were not many Chinese tune buds in this bundle. If she made Chinese tune bud scrambled eggs, she estimated that she could only make 7 or 8 plates at most. But it was not a big problem. First come first served. Wen Jiu had not tasted the taste of Chinese tune buds for a long time, so she cleaned and chopped them neatly. Tuna buds always have a special fragrance, and the fragrance is even more fragrant after being chopped. The method of making tuna bud scrambled eggs is even simpler. Just pour the chopped tuna buds into the egg liquid and stir evenly. After heating the pan over high heat, pour in the egg liquid mixed with the chopped tuna buds and quickly fry until golden. Wen Jiu stirred the spoon steadily and used a spatula to cut the solidified egg pancake into small pieces. After shaking the iron pan over high heat several times, he poured the fried tuna bud scrambled eggs into the plate. Kyoshi had smelled the fragrance a long time ago. After peeling the potatoes, she grabbed a pair of chopsticks and came uninvited. What is this? It smells so good. Kyoshi felt salivating just by smelling the smell. Tuna bud fried eggs. Wen Jiu made the fried eggs with tuna buds, but didn't have time to taste them. She picked up the peeled potatoes and started cutting them into pieces. If you're hungry, eat first. Although Kyoshi was a little embarrassed, the glutton in her stomach had already been aroused by the smell, so she couldn't help but pick up the golden fried eggs and put them in her mouth. A special fragrance that she had never tasted before filled her mouth. The fried golden and fragrant eggs wrapped with fragrant vegetables rushed straight to her head with a breath of spring. It made her feel like she was in a spring forest with flowers blooming and trees lush. It wasn't until a sound of knocking on the transparent window sounded that she was forcibly pulled out of the illusion. "Hey, what are you eating?" Kyoshi looked at the window and saw that the young boy who had followed Wen Jiu to the cafeteria was sticking to the window, and he was almost sticking his head in. Zikingai had been struggling between the two ideas of going back to the dormitory and staying. When he finally made up his mind to go back to the dormitory, he suddenly smelled a strange fragrance coming from window 18. This fragrance made him feel like a prey trapped in a deep jungle, and he was instantly lured into a trap. When he found the source of the fragrance, he discovered that the smell was actually wafting from the mysterious food that Kyoshi was eating. "Why don't you talk?" Zikingai could smell it, but couldn't eat it, which made him inexplicably a little anxious. "Are you selling what you eat?" Kyoshi felt that the person in front of her was like a greedy kitten, looking anxious to stretch out his claws to scratch her. But whether to sell or not was not something Kyoshi could decide. She turned around and asked Wen Jiu. After getting the nod, she turned around and told Zikingai, "Sell it for 30 star coins. Do you want it?" Zikingai didn't say anything nonsense, just paid the money directly and was eager to taste the food. Wen Jiu had no intention of being hard on money, so Zikingai quickly fried another plate of Chinese tuna fried eggs and handed it to him. Zikingai was speechless when she saw that it was Wen Jiu who served the dish. But then she thought about the natural right of her to spend money on food, so she took the plate and turned around and walked towards her seat. He first looked at the dish, not knowing what it was. Although it looked strange, it smelled really good. So Zikingai picked up a piece and tried to take a small bite. When she first bit it, the skin of the scrambled eggs was fragrant and crispy, but the inside was tender and smooth. The particles of Chinese tuna buds were mixed in it, and the mellow fragrance was stimulated during chewing. The crispy and soft taste made him eat bite after bite. Soon he ate the whole plate of Chinese tuna bud fried eggs clean, even the small pieces that fell, but he still felt unsatisfied. Another serving. Zikingai was already overwhelmed by the taste and quickly pushed to the window to buy another one. "No more for you." Wen Jiu leaned against the window with his chin supported by one hand and looked Zikingai in the eye. "If you're still hungry, you can order something else." But Zikingai didn't understand why he was not allowed to buy it the second time he wanted to. Wen Jiu saw his confusion and quickly said, "There's not much of this material left. If you buy a few more, there won't be any left. But I have money." Zikingai also quickly replied, "I can buy all of this dish." "Then why do you have to eat just one dish, if you're so rich? Shouldn't you try a wide range of delicacies?" Wen Jiu raised the corners of his lips, his eyes shining. "Good man, it seems that this kid is a big customer." Zikingai thought about it and felt that what Wen Jiu said made some sense. "What other dishes do you have?" "Shepherd's purse dumplings and silkworm potatoes." Wen Jiu's smile deepened. "Do you want to eat? It's as delicious as the fried eggs with tuna buds you ordered just now." "Then give me one each." Zikingai nodded, paid the money, and waited obediently by the window. Wen Jiu quickly prepared the two dishes, but this time it was Kyoshi who put them at the window for Zikingai, because Wen Jiu was still busy preparing the ingredients. But Zikingai didn't have time to pay attention to these. His attention was focused on the two foods he had never seen before. Although these two dishes did not emit the fragrance as directly as the previous fried eggs with tuna buds, he felt his appetite was aroused just by looking at the appearance. "Thank you for your support, little cuties. Thank you for your recommendation votes and collections. Your support is my motivation." 030 like heart woo woo woo. I recently found that there are a few little cuties who have been following the update. I'm so happy cack. There will be 3 updates every day these days. PS. 1. Quoted from Baidu Encyclopedia Xiangqian. Chapter 21 Toon Bud Scrambled Eggs 2. Zikingayu stared at the shepherd's purse dumplings on the plate. They were plump and round, and as white and crystal as jade. He had eaten so-called dumplings before, and they were eaten in high-end restaurants when his family took him to travel to other planets. But the dumplings in that high-end restaurant were completely different from the ones in front of him. He remembered that the shape of the dumplings on that plate was very strange, and even the fillings were leaking out of the dough. Zikingayu exhaled to cool the dumplings slightly, and then bit them carefully. As soon as he bit into it, the fragrant gravy splashed in his tongue, which was salty and fresh. It was followed by a little sweetness, but this sweetness was not strong and abrupt. Instead, it highlighted the salty fragrance of the meat filling, making the taste of the whole dumpling more layered. Zikingayu ate the dumplings faster than when he ate the scrambled eggs with Toon Buds before, and he stuffed the dumplings hard, even though his mouth was hot. Zikingayu threw the table manners taught at home behind his mind. He just wanted to enjoy the food to his heart's content. He didn't put down his chopsticks until he had eaten the plate clean. Then he covered his mouth and burped. Before eating this delicacy, Zikingayu didn't understand why people had to eat. Wouldn't it be better to drink nutrient solution? It can not only supplement nutrition, but also avoid those foods that look weird and taste hard to swallow. In the past, he only thought that food was either unpalatable or worse, but he never thought that someone could make food so delicious. If it were the Zikingayu of the past, he would definitely call the chef out and give him a good reward. But when he thought that the dumplings were made by Wen Jiu, he felt very uncomfortable. She is only good at making these few foods. Not everything she makes is delicious. Zikingayu whispered to herself to comfort herself, but couldn't help but stretch her chopsticks towards the bowl of Xiangqian potatoes. Hiss. The spicy and fresh taste hit Zikingayu's taste buds. He took a breath, and his eyes were a little misty because of the spiciness. But he was reluctant to put down his chopsticks. He felt more and more refreshed the more he ate. After the bowl was empty again, Zikingayu didn't want to find excuses to comfort himself. He couldn't say that the food was not delicious with a clear conscience. So he sat in his seat awkwardly for a long time and wanted to go to the window to talk to Wen Jiu. Zikingayu finally made up his mind to stand up, but suddenly saw a group of people rushing towards him like zombies with their fangs and claws bared. In an instant, the short him was drowned in the sea of people. Wow, 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 wow. I finally caught up. I was punished by the teacher to stay after class at noon and didn't get to eat the food at window number 18. I felt like I had lost my soul in the afternoon. 3 servings of shepherd's purse dumplings and 1 serving of silkworm potatoes. I didn't get to eat dumplings at noon and I drooled all over my pillow during lunch break. We want 4 servings of silkworm potatoes. Thank you. Zikingayu squeezed through the crowd for a long time before squeezing out, making him a little dizzy for a moment. Where did these people come from? He returned to his seat with doubts and observed. But he only saw Kayoshishi warmly entertaining customers at the window, serving food to everyone with a sweet smile. Wen Jiu was skillfully making dumplings and potatoes in the innermost part, and the students who lined up in a long line all had expectant smiles on their faces. It was completely different from the once lifeless cafeteria atmosphere. From time to time, some curious students came to the long line here to ask, and they were told by the students in the line how delicious the food at this window was, and then they joined the long line. The meal had just started, but the line at window number 18 had already surpassed the other windows. Due to its popularity, Wen Jiu and her team completed the business in just 1 hour. The two sat on the small stool and scrubbed the dishes, and they left only after they finished scrubbing the dishes and cleaning the kitchen. Seeing the two walk out of the cafeteria, Zikingayu, who had been quietly observing them, inexplicably developed some strange emotions and ran after them. Are you still short of people? Wen Jiu turned his head when he heard the voice and saw Zikingayu pouting, with a blush on his fair little face. Yes, are you coming? Wen Jiu thought to himself, they are short of a dishwasher. As a result, Zikingayu turned his head and ran away again. His behavior made Wen Jiu and Kaioshishi a little confused. However, the two of them didn't want to care about him because it was too tiring after a busy day. Wen Jiu and Kaioshishi just wanted to go back and lie down. As soon as he returned to the dormitory, Wen Jiu received a reply from Lee Kinson. 3047 Lee Kinson, because some students who work reported that the food distribution once a week would be in short supply. The teacher in charge of distributing food now allocates some extra food to each window every day. 3047 Lee Kinson, however, this extra distribution can be selected. If you need any food, you can go to the teacher to apply for it, and you can get it the next day. Wen Jiu stared at the message in a daze. Doesn't that mean she can do whatever she wants? There are so many dishes she can cook. Family wealth 9. Okay, thank you teacher Lee. Then Lee Kinson pushed the contact information of the teacher in charge of food application to Wen Jiu. After Wen Jiu sent a friend request, he waited for a long time, but didn't see the application approved. Wen Jiu thought that it might be that the teacher was still busy, so he didn't care. After she finished washing and lying back on the bed, she continued to study her own money-making plan. It feels that it is not enough to rely on selling food in the cafeteria alone. After all, the flow of customers in the school is limited. No matter how many people come, only students and teachers come to patronize. She is determined to become a rich woman. But after thinking about it, it seems that only setting up a stall on Xinguang is the most reliable, but she really can't afford the stall fee of 2,500. Is her way to make money destined to be difficult? Wen Jiu was lying on the bed with a confused mind. Kaioshishi seemed to have noticed her mood, so she asked softly, Jiu, what's wrong with you? I don't think you seem to be very happy. A little bit. Wen Jiu turned over. Shishi, what other ways do you think students like us can make money besides working in the cafeteria? Kaioshishi thought for a while. She wanted to say that she could open a store and set up a stall on Xinguang, but she soon realized that Wen Jiu might not even be able to pay the stall fee with her current economic level. Thinking about it this way, it seems that there is really no opportunity to make money. After all, they stay in the college all day. I figured it out. Kaioshishi suddenly patted the bed. We can do a live broadcast. Wen Jiu sat up and scratched her head. She had watched modern live broadcasts before, but most of them were singing, dancing and playing games. She really couldn't do singing, dancing and playing games. Seeing that Wen Jiu was still a little confused, Kaioshishi quickly said, do a food live broadcast. Jiu, you look so beautiful when you cook, and the food you make is so delicious. It would be a pity not to do a food live broadcast. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 22 Dark Cuisine Again 1. As she spoke, Kaioshishi logged onto the Star Network and began searching for some of the more famous live streaming websites. She first clicked on a website called Bicalive, and countless live streaming rooms suddenly appeared, including singing and dancing, holographic games, food eating broadcasts, and even military exercises. For a moment, Wen Jiu and Kaioshishi were dazzled. It was Wen Jiu who clicked into the food section and picked a few of the most popular food live streaming rooms on the list. I don't know if this popularity display is true or false. There are actually hundreds of millions of people watching online in the most popular food live streaming rooms. Moreover, technology is developing rapidly in the Interstellar era. Holographic images are like the host cooking in front of you. You can also smell the food while watching the live broadcast of food. If the host opens the function of transmitting tasting, you can even pay a certain fee to taste the food made by the host. Wen Jiu poked into a food live streaming room at random. As soon as he clicked in, he saw that Kaioshishi's wisdom ring display light screen suddenly enlarged. They were like being there, watching the enthusiastic young male anchor in front of them holding a fish full of bones in one hand and half a lamb chop in the other. He had a round figure and a warm smile on his face. Welcome my audience to the live broadcast room of Lao Zhu, the king of Chinese food. As soon as he finished speaking, dense comments came like a tide and began to swipe the screen behind him. One Lee Fortum knife. What will Lao Zhu cook today? I have prepared snacks. Cocoa sugar, hurry up and cook. I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry. Lao Zhu's Piglet Danon. Brother Zhu is on the air again. Piglets, go ahead. Brush up the barrage. Then the chubby young man who called himself Lao Zhu put the fish and chicken on the chopping board. He smiled and began to explain. Today I'm going to make a dish of crucian carp and mutton soup. This is a very famous dish in the ancient Chinese cookbook. I believe everyone who has read this cookbook in the library knows it. However, due to species mutation, the crucian carp has long since become the multi-spin fish of today. Not only has it become larger in size, but it is also covered with spikes all over its body. Lao Zhu. I also searched for a lot of information, and only then did I know that the multi-spin fish today is the crucian carp mentioned in the recipe. Wen Jiu stared intently at the holographic image in front of him. Lao Zhu was picking up the multi-spin fish and chopping off its spikes with a kitchen knife. She didn't know much about the mutant species here and thought she could find time to go to the library of 3047 Academy to look at the biological illustrations. After removing the thorns, Lao Zhu chopped the lamb chops into small pieces and threw them into the water to blanch. Everything seemed to be going so smoothly, even when Jiu thought that there were still people who could cook Chinese food. Until she saw Lao Zhu put the spiny fish directly into the hot water where the lamb chops were boiled, and the spiny fish not only did not remove the internal organs, but also did not deal with the scales. But the audience, including Kao Shishi, did not think there was anything wrong, as if these ingredients had always been handled so roughly. Okay, the next is the boring stewing time. Everyone can chat with Lao Zhu to pass the time. Lao Zhu's piglet brother. Will brother pig start tasting later? I'm so greedy. Yiqiu deo same question. Just watching Lao Zhu handle the ingredients makes me hungry, and I have already eaten several bags of dried vegetables. Seed big baby. Tasting, 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 tasting. Lao Zhu said with a smile, while wiping the chopping board. It will definitely be done. All the audience gentlemen can rest assured. Today I especially used my largest pot to stew the soup and strive to let more people taste the Chinese food made by me, Lao Zhu. These bold words are quite impassioned, but coupled with the cooking operations he made, Wen Jiu had a headache. Is it possible that no one in the Interstellar era can cook? Or are everyone used to eating rough and simple dark dishes? Kao Shishi used to watch these food live broadcasts with meals. She had also watched this anchor named Lao Zhu several times, and he often made some dishes that claimed to be ancient Chinese food. She only got a place to taste once, but she thought it tasted really good at the time, and she never thought about what other methods ancient Chinese food could be used for. Because of the changes of the times, many methods of making ancient Blue Star food have gradually disappeared, especially ancient Chinese food. Because of the complicated methods and many steps, there are even fewer dishes that can be left. Most of the remaining ancient Chinese food recipes were incomplete, but they were still compiled into the ancient Chinese recipe. So many interstellar people thought that the ancient Chinese food recipes were so simple and crude. It was not until she ate the food made by Wen Jiu that Kao Shishi realized that the food she had eaten before was not worthy of being called food. This is why she encouraged Wen Jiu to start a food live broadcast. She believed that with Wen Jiu's skills, it would be no problem for him to become a famous food anchor. Not long after, Lao Zhu opened the lid of the pot, and Wen Jiu looked at the big pot stewing spiny fish and lamb chops. She felt that it was difficult to call the stuff inside soup. Red blood foam floated on the light white soup. Lao Zhu stirred the pot with an iron spoon, and Wen Jiu could still see the fish scale residue and the boiled fish meat mixed together. In addition, she could smell the smell. The fishy smell of mutton spread along the airflow to Wen Jiu and Kao Shishi. It caused the two to retch. But the barrage on the screen was still praising this pot of slop-like product crazily. Old Pig's Piglet Danan. Wow, is this the legendary crucian carp stewed with mutton? Wen Jiu wanted to say, "No, it's not. Only fork and knife. I can't wait. This aroma is so special." That's right, the smell of blood and mutton are mixed together. Cocoa sugar, when will the tasting start? When will the tasting start? After Old Pig stirred the contents of the pot, he sprinkled in a handful of salt and a handful of MSG, which made Wen Jiu speechless. It will be ready soon. All the audience members, be ready to grab the tasting spots. 300 spots are prepared this time. As he spoke, he signaled the helper next to him to bring stacks of small bowls. Old Pig's Piglet big brother, there are still so few spots for tasting. When will it be open to 500? Old Pig just smiled and carefully scooped up a spoonful of soup to show it to the camera. The stench suddenly became stronger, with blood foam and fish meat that had been stewed into mud mixed together. Wen Jiu and Kyoshi couldn't stop retching again. Our Chinese cuisine is really going to be ruined. Okay, get ready to start the tasting. After Liu Zhu finished his presentation, he poured the soup into small bowls and poured out bowl after bowl of soup. Wen Jiu and the others also saw the message in the lower right corner of the screen that the host is about to start the tasting, so please be prepared. The two had no intention of grabbing the tasting spots. If it weren't for watching how these hosts broadcast live, Wen Jiu would have wanted to turn off the live broadcast and run to the toilet. Thanks to the little angels who voted for the monthly ticket, recommended ticket and collected it. Thank you so much. I've been recommended recently, and I urgently need votes and collections CAC. If you have votes, please vote. At the same time, welcome the new little cuties. Give you a heart 030. There have been 3 updates in the past few days, and the update time is stable at noon, afternoon, and evening. PS. This article is a story about the heroine's career in money making line and the fighting and upgrading line. I will work hard to write better and better. CAC. Chapter 23. Dark Cuisine again too. Because they heard that Liu Zhu's food live broadcast room was going to start tasting, many people who were watching the live broadcast rushed to the live broadcast room to wait. Soon, the heat in the live broadcast room began to rise again. Wen Jiu and Kyoshi only heard the system start the countdown broadcast, and as the last countdown fell, the 300 tasting places were instantly snapped up. UEQIUDO. I didn't get it. Why are your hand speeds so fast? Zhangzi Dabao I got it. Liu Zhu. Start the tasting quickly. I can't wait. Liu Zhu's Piglet Dan, and today is another day that I can't get a tasting spot. It's so painful because the live broadcast platform has regulations that tasting spots cannot be transferred to others. So those who have grabbed them are posting barrages to show off, but more people who didn't grab them are frantically posting barrages to ask for more spots. Liu Zhu is very fast, and he scooped out 300 bowls of soup in a moment, and then when Jiu watched the small bowls on the stage disappear one by one. Big C baby, this soup is so delicious. Bright color and rich flavor. Cocoa sugar, I agree. I went to one Hey restaurant to drink the 3 fresh soup last time. I think it is not as good as the Crucian carp stewed mutton soup made by Liu Zhu. Everything is floating clouds. Liu Zhu, can you get more tasting spots next time? I have seen that you have been live streaming for half a year and have never grabbed a spot. I'm really speechless. Next is the chat session between Liu Zhu and his fans. When Jiu and Kyoshi turned off his live broadcast room, then the two went to other high-profile live broadcast rooms to take a look. When Jiu found that the food they made was only darker, but not the darkest. It was rare to see a normal fried mushroom, but the anchor didn't know the poisonous mushroom, so he tasted it and started talking nonsense and dancing on the spot. After browsing around like this, Wen Jiu also had an understanding of food live broadcasting. How can this be a food live broadcast? It's clearly a dark cooking competition. Jiu, I think you can definitely make money by being a food anchor. Do you want to try it? Kyoshi just came back from the toilet after vomiting. When she thought about how she had drooled over those strange foods, she felt sick. The food cooked by Wen Jiu was still delicious. But I can't live broadcast my cooking. Wen Jiu thought for a while, and he didn't have any live broadcast equipment. Kyoshi smiled and said, "Small problem, we can rent a set of the cheapest equipment at the Star Network Gold Rush shop. Then we can live broadcast you cooking in the cafeteria every day." Listening to her words, Wen Jiu thought that this method was feasible, so he opened his Star Network account and searched in the Gold Rush shop. After comparing 3 stores, Wen Jiu chose the store with the lowest price and rented a set of the lowest level live broadcast equipment at a price of 400 star coins per month. Next, Wen Jiu registered an anchor account on BakaLive and waited for the live broadcast equipment to arrive tomorrow to start the live broadcast. It was already late at night when the two of them finished their activities, so they didn't do anything else and went straight to sleep. Wen Jiu didn't have classes in the morning, but she still got up early and started practicing Taikai. She was slowly punching and fighting back on the balcony when she heard Kyoshi whispering, "Jiu, what are you practicing?" Wen Jiu looked up at Kyoshi, and the warm sunlight shone on Wen Jiu's body, as if coated with a layer of halo. Taikai. Kyoshi still didn't understand, but felt that Wen Jiu at this time inexplicably had a kind of ethereal aura. So she stood on the balcony and watched fascinated, and it was only when Wen Jiu finished a set of Taikai and called her that she came back to her senses. "It seems that the live broadcast equipment I rented has arrived, and it is at the college storage." Wen Jiu put on his school uniform jacket and changed into a pair of sneakers. "I'll go with you. It just so happens that I don't have classes in the morning." Kyoshi originally had a class in the morning, but the teacher had something to do and cancelled it. The college cafeteria is closed in the morning, so the students can only survive by drinking nutrient solution. The two of them each took a bottle of nutrient solution before leaving. It must be said that the speed of the delivery was beyond Wen Jiu's imagination. She remembered that the delivery address of the store was on another planet, but she didn't expect that the goods would arrive as soon as she woke up. After she and Kyoshi picked up the express at the storage, they excitedly carried the boxes to the cafeteria. Wen Jiu and Kyoshi wanted to come earlier to study how to set up the live broadcast equipment, but they didn't expect that they would run into a teacher and several students distributing food. "This basket is for window number 14, and that basket is for window number 15. The two didn't want to disturb them and were ready to bypass these people and leave, but when Jiu suddenly heard the teacher speak, "Throw the basket with spiny fish and white radish to window number 18. Window number 18 was the one managed by Wen Jiu. Then another student whispered, "Teacher Zhang, we have sent the worst ingredients to number 18 twice." The person called Teacher Zhang continued, "So what? You just need to distribute the ingredients. Why do you care so much? So the ingredients sent yesterday were all the worst?" Wen Jiu thought to himself, while quietly turning on the recording function of Ziji. "It's still the old rules. The best ones are sent to window number 3. Zhang Jing coughed a few times. "Remember to put the weeds in the basket of number 18 to make up the number." Kyoshi had clenched her fists at this time. She didn't understand why the teacher did this. Wen Jiu silently gestured with his lips to let Kyoshi calm down. Only then did she suppress her desire to rush out to ask what was going on. Wen Jiu actually thought that she would be secretly targeted. After all, she had a fight with Shi Gang, who was said to have a background. When she first came here, she was surprised that Shi Gang didn't find someone to embarrass her later. So now that she knew about this situation, she was not in a hurry to expose it. Anyway, the ingredients that these people thought were the worst could become delicious food that people couldn't stop eating in her hands. Wen Jiu calmly recorded the evidence and waited until these people left before she took Kyoshi to window 18. "They are really too much." Kyoshi closed the door tightly and then began to defend herself. "Why do they give us the worst ingredients? Don't be angry first. It's not good for you to get sick from anger." Wen Jiu calmly comforted Kyoshi's emotions and then told Kyoshi everything about his previous experience with Shigang. The more Kyoshi listened, the more surprised she felt. She didn't even know that Wen Jiu had fought with that little bully and even beat him to a pulp. "Even so, we can't let them bully us." Kyoshi pouted, still feeling very wronged. Wen Jiu opened the courier box and said, "Of course, but we need to collect more evidence. At this time, she also understood why the teacher in charge of distributing the food ingredients had not approved her friend request for so long. It turned out that he never wanted to be friends with her. Thank you all little angels for the monthly tickets, recommendation tickets and collections. Thank you so much. I give you a big heart. 030 I hope the new little cuties can click on the collection and recommendation tickets. Cack, I have been on the list these days and I really need your votes and collections, so I'm counting on you. Cack. PS. I had a great time eating today and almost forgot the first update at noon. I'm an idiot ORZ. Chapter 24 Welcome to the live broadcast, Room of Gongzi Far K1. After unpacking the package, it was different from the live broadcast equipment that Wen Jiu had imagined. There were no complicated tripods, fill light rings, microphones, and so on. There was only a small robot that looked like a bee stored in the box, and there was an instruction manual next to it. When Jiu first picked up the instruction manual and read it, only then did she realize that technology had advanced to the point where even live broadcasts did not require those complicated equipment. The small robot in the box could complete all the functions. She took out the small robot and started to fiddle with it, but she and Kyoshi had never done live broadcasts, and after fiddling with it for a long time, she still couldn't figure out how to turn on the robot. Help, why doesn't this robot even have a switch? When Jiu was sweating profusely, and she deeply realized that she was lagging behind the times. But Kyoshi was not much better. Although there were many robots in her home responsible for housework, she had never come into contact with this type of robot. So when Jiu could only keep rubbing the bee robot until she touched a circular groove on the wings behind the bee. Biological information has been confirmed. The little robot flapped its wings, and the antennae on its head also swayed, and the front end of the antennae flashed a few times. When Jiu's wisdom ring also flashed twice at this time. She clicked on the panel and saw a little bee icon suddenly appeared inside. She clicked on the little bee icon again and a new interface popped up on the panel. When Jiu followed the steps prompted on the interface to enter information, set up live broadcasts, etc. It took a while to figure out how to operate this live broadcast robot. In fact, the method of use is very convenient. Just turn on the little bee and connect it to the wisdom ring to use the various functions of the little bee. This little bee includes automatic shooting focus, intelligent fill light, beauty voice change and other functions. When Jiu felt that she didn't need to use beauty, after all, she was live broadcasting food, not live broadcasting beauty. So when she saw the function of choosing to cover her face with a cover, she decisively drew an image to cover everyone's face. Then when Jiu thought that her voice was too immature now, so she also turned on the voice change function, and her voice would automatically change when she spoke during the live broadcast. After the setup was completed, when Jiu was very satisfied. After placing the little bee next to her, she and Kyoshi began to prepare today's ingredients. What may make one man sweet may make another man poison. The teacher who had been making things difficult for her thought that the ingredients sent to her were the worst, but when Jiu didn't think so, she took down the basket and saw that it was filled with several spiny fish and a bunch of white radishes, among which was a bunch of so-called wild grass. When Jiu took out the wild grass and looked at it and immediately smiled. Isn't this wild chrysanthemum? After being made into dried chrysanthemum, it can be used to make tea. Chrysanthemum tea has the effects of nourishing the liver and improving eyesight, clearing away heat and detoxifying. It can also reduce the occurrence of dry hair and oral ulcers in the human body. 1. Kyoshi, who was standing by, saw Wen Jiu's smiling face and came to her curiously to look at the wild grass. What is this little yellow flower? Can it be eaten? After only a short time of contact with Wen Jiu, Kyoshi became Wen Jiu's little fan. She thought Wen Jiu was really amazing. She could make any ingredient into a delicious dish. So when she saw this bundle of wild grass full of small flowers, Kyoshi couldn't help but ask what she was thinking. Theoretically, it's edible, but it's better to make tea after drying. When Jiu picked the bright yellow wild chrysanthemums one by one and put them in another small basket thinking of taking them back to the dormitory after the business is over today. In addition to drying and making tea, Wen Jiu also thought that she could save some of them so that she could make elixirs when she found a few more herbs. The effect of the elixir she made with dried chrysanthemums is much better than simply soaking them in water. After processing the wild chrysanthemums, Wen Jiu also collected the remaining stems and leaves. These seemingly redundant stems and leaves are actually very useful. Kyoshi was watching her carefully processing the things in front of her. When Wen Jiu finished processing the bundle of wild chrysanthemums, she saw Wen Jiu pouring several large spiny fish in the vegetable basket onto the chopping board. The spiny fish had already chopped off the external thorns in advance. Wen Jiu looked at them carefully and confirmed that the so-called spiny fish was an enlarged version of crucian carp with extra thorns. After thinking for a while, she picked up the kitchen knife and wanted to start processing these spiny fish. But she quickly realized that, since she had rented the live broadcast equipment, she had to try live broadcasting. So Wen Jiu put down the kitchen knife, opened the ZG panel, and began to study how to live broadcast. Fortunately, the steps were not difficult, because Wen Jiu had registered the Anchor account yesterday, and now she only needed to start the live broadcast and use the beta shoot. But now she needed to give the live broadcast room a title. Wen Jiu began to think hard. The title must be attractive enough so that people would click in to watch the live broadcast. In order to make money, she had to give it a loud title. After a while, Wen Jiu found a title that she thought was the most attractive from her experience of watching live broadcasts in modern times. Men were silent and women cried. The elderly and children next door cried after watching it. What title could attract more attention than the shocking body? After entering it, she officially started her live broadcast career. Why didn't I grab it again? Chris sat in front of the light screen panel, looking at the 3 words snatched on it with tears in his eyes. Why? Why didn't he get a chance to taste food again? He finally caught up with Leo ZHU's live broadcast, but there were too many competitors. He couldn't get a chance. He really couldn't get a chance. The food section was full of mixed people. Although there were several top anchors like Leo ZHU who could make real food, most of the food anchors were just taking advantage of the situation. For Chris, who loved to eat, he thought that the skills of these anchors were an insult to the word food. Unfortunately, it was too difficult to get a place to taste food with top anchors, so Chris could only exit Leo ZHU's live broadcast room and look for other food anchors' live broadcast rooms. As soon as he exited Leo ZHU's live broadcast room, a prompt box popped up saying that a new anchor had started broadcasting. He wanted to close this prompt box, but after seeing the title of the live broadcast, he didn't want to close it. Men were silent and women cried. The elderly and children next door cried after watching it. He vaguely remembered that the last new anchor who gave a title like this seemed to have not started broadcasting for a month, after being criticized for being a clickbait. After all, not everyone can handle a certain type of shocking title. But Chris still clicked in with curiosity, and the holographic projection changed instantly, and the image that appeared made him speechless. What is this huge crying cat head on the host's face? Chris has watched a lot of live broadcasts and naturally knows that many hosts don't want to show their faces, so they use masks to cover their faces. But others use the normal images that come with the system, or draw virtual Q version villains. This huge crying cat head really shocked Chris, and the host with the crying cat head seemed to be not very familiar with live broadcasting. The other party didn't notice that a viewer had entered the live broadcast room at all, and continued to deal with the things in his hands. Chris looked again, and saw that the host was petite, and was wearing an apron that was obviously not in line with his body size. This made him fall into deep thought, and after a moment he tapped the light screen, and entered a bullet comment. Chris wants to eat 5 bowls. Is the host a child laborer who was kidnapped to sell misery? I can help you contact the Federal Juvenile Protection Bureau. P.S. 1. The efficacy of chrysanthemum tea comes from Baidu Encyclopedia. Chapter 25. Welcome to the Gongzi Farke Live Room 2. Ding dong. A viewer has entered the live broadcast room. Wen Jiu received the system prompt a few minutes after Chris entered the live broadcast room. There was nothing she could do. The B she rented was the cheapest live broadcast equipment. The sensing aspect was naturally slower. So when Jiu opened the live broadcast interface and debugged the barrage, the one that came into view was the one sent by Chris. Is the anchor a child laborer who was kidnapped to sell misery? I was speechless. She was indeed a minor, but she was not forced to sell misery. When Jiu quickly said to the bicentennial, "Welcome, Chris wants to eat 5 bowls to the live broadcast room. I'm the anchor Gong Zfk. If you like it, remember to follow me." She didn't feel ashamed of her anchor name at all. Her words were smooth and flowing, which made Kyoshi stunned. However, Kyoshi didn't know that when Jiu's skilled live broadcast came from her experience of watching live broadcasts on certain maps and certain audio platforms in modern times. Chris, who was watching the live broadcast, fell silent again after hearing Wen Jiu's words. Her deep and strong voice was obviously not a minor. It seems that this anchor is a middle-aged dwarf who is even more miserable. Thinking of this, Chris felt a little reluctant. He put down his hand that wanted to exit the live broadcast room and patiently watched Wen Jiu's live broadcast. Chris wants to eat 5 bowls. What is the anchor going to eat? It seems that there is a spiny fish on the chopping board. Wen Jiu picked up a spiny fish and showed it to the camera. The bee that was filming in the distance also pulled a close-up lens. Today I will show you a show. A big fish stewed in an iron pot. After the show, Wen Jiu put down the spiny fish and picked up a kitchen knife. He first removed the viscera of the spiny fish, then scraped off the scales, and finally performed a neat bone removal. Chris only saw Wen Jiu's knife fall, and in just a few seconds, he removed all the small fish bones of the spiny fish. But the bones of the spiny fish were still retained. Before he could ask a question, he saw the second viewer who had entered at some point posted a comment. Pumpkin Big Guanan, the host's treatment method is different from others, but why only remove the small fish bones? When Jiu poured oil into the iron pot while explaining, because using spiny fish with main fish bones to make soup will make the soup more delicious. Pumpkin Big Guanan, why only remove the small bones? To prevent it from getting stuck in my throat, baby. When Jiu's voice softened a bit, but under the influence of the voice changer, it inexplicably had a motherly feeling of kindness. There is another difference between spiny fish and modern crucian carp. Although it has more spines, it has little fishy smell and almost no need to remove the fishy smell. So after the oil was heated, when Jiu put the processed spiny fish into the pan and fried them until both sides were golden brown, the frying oil fragrance was transmitted to the sensor of the little bee with a sizzling sound, and then to every viewer watching the live broadcast. Chris only smelled this faint oil fragrance and felt a little hungry inexplicably. He quickly took out a bag of chicken breast slices and ate them. After frying the fish, when Jiu poured them into another pot of hot water and started stewing. Ding dang 20. What is the anchor doing? Is it done by covering the lid? Stew the big fish in the iron pot. This viewer. When Jiu took out 2 white radishes at this time, washed and peeled the radishes, and cut them into thin strips. Each radish strip was evenly thick and transparent. Several viewers in the live broadcast room were stunned by this operation. Although kitchen robots can now use knife skills so well, they are just robots after all. They have watched so many food live broadcasts, but this is the first time they have seen a living person with such good knife skills. Chris wants to eat 5 bowls. Has this been practiced? Pumpkin Dagwanan is the host a robot, because the fish soup still needs to be simmered for a while. When Jiu is now cutting potatoes into pieces. After receiving the barrage, she replied a few words. Practice. I'm not a robot, I'm a real living person. It happened that during this period, several viewers entered the live broadcast room. They watched Wen Jiu cutting potatoes, and felt that it was boring. Monkey brother, why is it potatoes again? Leo Wang next door is also making potatoes. Ding dang 20, it's not potatoes. The host said he was going to make some iron pot stewed fish. Estimating that the time was about right, when Jiu poured the previously cut white radish into it. The moment she opened the lid, the fresh fragrance overflowed, and the bursts of fragrance made those who wanted to leave the live broadcast room give up the idea instantly. Chris wants to eat 5 bowls. It smells so good. Chris felt that the aroma wafting from the pot was so delicious that it made him drool. He had seen several anchors put spiny fish into water, to stew and cook before, but the taste was not as tempting as Wen Jiu's fish soup. And he saw clearly, just now, that the color of the fish soup was milky white, which was completely different from the fish soup full of blood foam made by others. Could this be the treasure anchor he had been looking for a long time? Chris couldn't wait to grab a spot to taste it. The other viewers were the same as him. Pumpkin, big pumpkin. It smells so good. When will it be ready? Big brother monkey, why did the anchor put the white radish in the soup? Isn't this stuff eaten raw? Do you know how to cook? However, Wen Jiu just smiled, and after waiting for a while, she opened the lid of the pot again, and added a little salt and pepper to season it. Even though they hadn't tasted the food yet, the steaming aroma alone was enough to whet their appetite. The little bee zoomed in again, to take a close-up of the fish soup. The fish soup was milky white and clear, and it exuded an alluring aroma without a trace of greasiness, making everyone watching the live broadcast sniff their noses, wanting to smell more of the aroma. The few comments that were originally there also became more and more, with dozens of comments floating across Wen Jiu's light screen panel. Chris wants to eat 5 bowls. When will the tasting start? Host, ding dang 20. I don't want to wait any longer. Start the tasting soon. Host, brother monkey, it smells okay, but I wonder how it tastes. The man named brother monkey is also a citizen from the intermediate planet Woostar. Unlike ordinary people like Chris, he is a well-known picky gourmet. As a gourmet, it is his duty to find food reviews and food. Today, he opened the Bacala food zone as usual, wanting to go to the familiar host to see what was going on. But those people were all cooking potatoes, but what he hated most was eating potatoes. So he could only look for other live broadcast rooms. At first, when he saw this live broadcast room with the title, men were silent and women were in tears, and the elderly and children next door cried with greed. He just thought it was funny. How could anyone make such exaggerated food? But now he found that he seemed to be wrong. He couldn't help himself, just by smelling the tempting aroma. He saw that the barrage he had just sent out was not replied by the anchor named Gongzi Fake, so he sent another barrage. Brother monkey, when will the anchor start tasting? But Gongzi Fake just smiled and said one sentence. Sorry, we can't have a tasting. Wen Jiu, please don't imagine my personality without permission, okay? Today's last update has been delivered. Thank you to every little angel for the monthly tickets, recommendation tickets and collections you clicked. CAC. Please forgive me for shamelessly asking for votes and collections during this period, because you need to see these to be on the list. I hope that the new little cuties can also support me by clicking on the collection and recommendation tickets. Thank you very much. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.